So, the first thought of the main character when he was born in this world was why his vision was so distorted. A girl approached Mrs. Maya and said that she had given birth to a boy. The second girl said that he was finally born and then asked her to give him to her. The girl says that he has green eyes like his father and dark hair like his. The maid says that his face looks like a king. The girl says that this is true. She is sure that he will become a wonderful ruler. The protagonist thinks that these girls were saying something about the ruler. He didn't understand where he was born, and why he understood their speech at all. The girl holds her son and then says that her child will be called Raymond. She says that the boy will become the next king of the Centoro kingdom. The main character realized that he was reborn. Time had flown by since his birth. 3 months had passed unnoticed. By this time, his memories had begun to return. In his previous life, he lived on Earth. He was a purebred Japanese. He doesn't know why, but he apparently died. He asks to be excused from specifying what he did in his previous life. For some reason unknown to him, he was born into the royal family of this world. In his previous life, he could easily be called a grown man, but now he is a cute and small child with soft skin. At first, when his memory returned, he was in despair, but after a few months, he resigned himself. Well, not exactly resigned, or rather, he put his thoughts in order. He had time to realize that he was just a helpless child, but with memories. And if you think about it, then perhaps in his past life he was a completely different person. His memories are constantly changing, and with each change they are supplemented. But the main character was definitely not a small child, but not an old man either. The main thing is that now he is he. In 3 months he realized that when the maids whispered like that, it meant that the mistress was coming to him. The girl grabbed the boy and told him that he would be the next king. Maja, the first lady of the Ost Empire, assures her son that he will become king, despite the competition with the son of the Duchess. She often encourages him with such words, although she looks like a young girl. From her, the hero learned that he had brothers and sisters, which meant that his father had other wives besides his mother. Therefore, if nothing happened, his elder brother should become the heir. However, because of the behavior of the protagonist's mother, the servants do not want to contact him, and now he will start talking about his father. Suddenly, a man with long hair bursts into the room. He says that he came to see his son. Abram Centoro, the reigning king and father of the protagonist, addresses Raymond, emphasizing his resemblance to him, especially in the eyes. King Abram openly expresses his love for his son, which confuses the hero and negatively affects his self-esteem. At the same time, his mother insists that he become king. The hero feels confused and worried about this attitude of his parents. She was a very nice maid. Her name is Maria, and she is Raymond's nanny. She is a beautiful girl with a gentle character. He thinks that the girl is perfect. He cannot give the wife of his dreams to some random person. The hero understands the age difference with Maria, who once courted him. He is not ready for a relationship, but he does not want to lose her. Maria consoles him, believing that everything will work out. His mother, Maya, supports his ambitions, and Maria inspires him to see the world more broadly. She says that in that direction is the homeland of Raymond's mother, Mrs. Maya, the Empire of Ost. That country is not at all like theirs. There are many, many mountains on its territory. Dragons, revered as messengers of God, play an important role in the Ost Empire, where many knights are skilled riders. Upon learning of their existence, the protagonist displays childish joy, surprising Maria with his delight. Dragons are noble creatures who choose a partner for life. Their devotion is so strong that if one of the pair dies, the other cannot bear the grief and dies too. Maria mentions that dragons are related to the scaly reptiles of Rengo Notos, which surprises the hero, who is thinking about lizardmen. She decides to tell him more about Rengo Notos, seeing his interest. Raymond leaves the nursery for the first time, as his mother, the queen, is busy with business and his father rarely visits. Mary, worried about him, has not yet dared to take him outside. But today, the long-awaited day has arrived. Maria left the room. His room was filled with furniture from medieval Europe, and when he entered the corridor, he saw that everything here was filled with the same atmosphere. Knight Chris meets Maria and learns that Raymond is with her today. Maria shares an idea to show Raymond what the world looks like from the outside. Chris approves of the idea and offers to accompany them. Suddenly, Raymond notices the man's tail. Chris puts his hand to his helmet. Chris tells Maria and Raymond that they will need security and calls a soldier. Raymond notices that Chris has somehow contacted someone but does not understand how exactly this happened. Chris says that the soldier will be here soon, so he asks to wait for him for a while and then go. Raymond pulled Maria by a lock of hair. The girl asked what the gentleman wanted. The girl guessed that the kid thought it was strange that Chris was able to contact someone. The man comes up and says that His Highness has never seen a magic transmitter. Raymond smiles. Chris takes off his helmet. He was in the form of a cat, and there was an earring attached to his ear. Chris said that this earring is a transmitter. The stone has a spell imbued into it. By putting your magic power into it, you can contact another person. Chris explains that he used a magical transmitter called Maiden. Seeing the baby touch the earring, Chris marvels at his sophistication, noting that other children could simply tug on it. Maria says that Mr. Raymond is really very smart. It's as if he understands everything that is said to him. Chris replies that he can't wait to see what he will become in the future. Maria mentions that Chris is from Rengo Nodos, surprising Raymond, who was expecting a lizardman. Chris wonders if Raymond has become fascinated with his kingdom after Maria's stories of dragons and scaly reptiles. Chris takes the baby's hand and kisses the back of his hand. The hero admires Chris's manners and dreams of becoming such a gentleman when he grows up. Maria plans to show Raymond the garden so that he can feel the atmosphere of the United Kingdom, looking at the southern side. Chris says that there really is something like that. Still, it's not quite what you see on his parents. Maria is sad and tells Chris that Ms. Maya says that Mr. Raymond can become the crown prince. She hugs the baby and says that Mr. Raymond should have a chance too. She wants him to know not only about his native lands, but also about other countries and other races. Chris approves of Maria's concern and hints that although Raymond may become the heir, his situation is complicated by his relatives. The hero thinks that Chris and Maria should not worry because he does not want to cause them problems and is not going to fight for the throne, and this is impossible because he has so many older brothers. Then the hero showed a desire to touch Chris. He had never cursed his short limbs so much. The baby begins to reach out to touch Chris. Maria begins to scream for Raymond to be careful. Chris, too, ran in a panic to catch Raymond. Chris and Maria caught Raymond and hugged each other. They noticed that they were very close to each other and were embarrassed. Raymond notices this and thinks that they should get married already. He will do everything in his power to support Maria and Chris. Giancarlo, who has come up, notices the child at Maria's and is happy, assuring her that there was no noise. Raymond tries to say something, causing even greater joy. He starts to coo at the baby and notices his soft cheeks. The young man asks if the child is Maria's. The girl says that it is the son of Her Highness Maya and Giancarlo's younger brother. The boy is surprised that this is his younger brother. Maria kneels down. Giancarlo says that John lied to him and that he does have a younger brother. Raymond thinks that he doesn't know about John, so he assumes that this is another relative. The boy asks Raymond to listen to him and, shyly, says that his name is Giancarlo and he is his older brother. Raymond notes that Giancarlo is very nice. Giancarlo is pleased to see Raymond and suggests that he call him Jean, which only John is allowed to do. He asks if it is true that Raymond is leaving his room for the first time and invites him for a walk. Chris joins after checking Giancarlo's consent. Giancarlo suggests that Chris carry Raymond since Maria is busy. Chris agrees, showing his gallantry, which impresses Raymond. Maria shows Raymond plants, Raymond plants, Roy Roju, which looks like a dragon wrapped around a gem, and a tree that oozes sap called Dragon's Pearl and Tree Tears in the Nothos language. Jean tells Raymond that his mother is an elf, so he has even been to the south, and it is very beautiful there. He suggests that Raymond go there together someday. Lemon realizes that Jean is an elf and is amazed by his beauty, wondering how he didn't notice his ears right away. Lemon is happy to be in a classic fantasy and dreams of meeting an elf woman like Jean who plays the harp. Suddenly, Jean asks Chris to let him go. Then he runs to some bushes and then runs to Ray's brother. He tucks a flower behind his ear. Then he says that the red flower is Antares. In the language of flowers, it means, I will always love you. Jean smiles and says that he is giving this flower to Raymond. Maria says that Antares flowers are also called crystal flowers, and they bloom very beautifully. When Raymond grows up and gets his own room, she suggests planting these flowers in his room. Chris says that when the time comes, he will give Maria the seed of this flower. Jean says that this is unfair because he also wants to give something to his brother Ray. Jean touches Raymond's cheeks and says that he may not be as strong as John, but he is still his older brother, so no matter what, he will protect his brother. Jean says that it is getting cold outside, so it is time for Maria and Raymond to go back, and he will stay in the garden for a little while. Maria says that in that case, they will go first. Suddenly, Jean becomes short of breath and, coughing, falls down. Suddenly, another young man appears in the garden. He runs up to Jean and picks him up. He asks Jean what happened. The boy replies that everything is fine. He is just very happy because he has a younger brother. The young man who holds Jean and says that he does not recognize this seventh scoundrel. He shouts that he will never recognize him. A few years later, Maria called His Highness and asked where he had gone. Raymond grew up very naughty and constantly made Maria worry. Suddenly, Raymond jumps out of the closet and scares Maria. The girl, frightened, scolds Raymond, but he makes a sweet face and apologizes. Maria asks His Highness how much more fun they can have. She asks if Raymond wanted to meet His Highness Giancarlo today. If so, they need to get ready. 5 years had passed since he first met Jean. All this time, he had only communicated with him and did not know the other brothers. In addition, during these 5 years, he learned that he was the 7th prince in this royal family. His mother constantly instilled in her son the idea that he should become king, but he himself does not feel much desire to take the throne. So far, he only knows the names of his older brothers, since he has never met them. Frederick and Orlando are the children of Queen Karina. Bertrand and Andre are the children of the second Queen Anastasia. Jean and Giovanni are the sons of the third Queen Sophia. Raymond barely knows his brothers because of his mother's pressure to make him king. He rarely left his room until Marie finally allowed him to go outside. Jean now hosts a tea party in the garden for Raymond's birthday. A joyful Raymond greets Chris, who has come for him. The boy trusts Chris and looks forward to the long-awaited exit. Jean is standing in the garden and waiting for Raymond. Suddenly, Jean notices his brother and sits down to hug him. Jean says that he has been waiting for him for a long time. The brothers hug. But suddenly, Jean starts coughing. Raymond asks if Jean is okay, but the young man replies that everything is fine and Ray shouldn't worry. Raymond remembers Jean's poor health, caused by the mixing of races, and thinks that if he had medical knowledge from a past life, he could help. Jean, apologizing to Ray, offers to look at a new painting he has painted. Ray happily agrees, knowing that Jean, like him, rarely goes outside and has found solace in painting. Jean says that Niarukos and Maria can't go any further because this is their secret place with Ray. Maria says that there is a protective barrier in the southern garden, so they have nothing to worry about. Chris says that if anything happens to each other, they can call them right away. Jean and Ray head deeper into the garden. Suddenly, Jean steps on a crystal flower. He says it is Antares and then asks Ray if he likes the flower. Ray reveals that Jean gave him a flower when they first met and admits that this memory is dear to him. Jean is surprised that Ray remembers such early events, and Ray himself finds it strange. Jean then asks the boy if he still remembers what Jean said then. Ray says that Jean wanted to give him something then. Jean turns and tells Raymond to follow him. The boy takes his brother's hand and they walk through the garden. Raymond begins to beam and says that it is incredibly beautiful here. Then Jean invites Ray to go to the gazebo to have some tea. John was sitting there. The boy said that he realized where Jean was going behind his back, namely to meet Ray. Jean asks John why he came here. John points his finger at Ray and the boy falls. John tells Jean not to forget that he is not only his younger brother, but also the heir to the throne. He looks menacingly at Raymond and tells him to know his place. Raymond thinks that John is Jean's brother, and also the 5th Crown Prince, Giovanni Centoro. John defends Ray against John's accusations, claiming that Ray has no ambitions for the throne. John is skeptical, believing Ray to be Maya's son, but John insists that Ray is their common brother. John puts his hand on Jean's cheek and says that Ray is a stranger to him and that he has no blood connection with him, but Jean is very dear to him. Raymond thinks that Jean has always protected him, so he doesn't want Jean to fight with John because of him. Jean turns around and says that Ray has done nothing wrong and he will protect him. Suddenly, the boy starts coughing very loudly. John says that it's all because of Raymond and then pushes the hero away. Lemon doesn't understand and says what John is talking about. The young man begins to cry and says that whenever Ray is around, Jean always gets overexerted because of him. Raymond was surprised by this. John would have turned 14 this year. In Japan, at 14, you are still a schoolboy, that is, a child. so Ray understands the pain Giovanni is going through. For John, brother Jean is the closest person. He probably always takes care of him when Jean has another attack. He wants to protect him with all his heart. Raymond stands up and shouts to his brother John to get Maria and teacher Chris here, then asks him to hurry. Ray is only 5 years old, so John, at 14, will be faster than him. John sullenly says that he is forced to leave Ray with Jean, but then smirks, warning that he will protect his brother if anything happens. Ray starts to get angry, and then he starts yelling at John and telling him to shut up. He says that if John doesn't call for help, then he will, and John should stay here. Ray turns around and tells him one last thing. John should just keep watching Jean suffer in his arms because there's nothing he can do. Ray rushes for help, knowing he can't abandon Jean, who has always cared for him. But his cry is lost among the sounds of the forest, and he doubts he'll be able to find help quickly. But one thing is clear. A solution needs to be found urgently. Something that can make a loud noise and attract attention. He remembers fireworks. In one of the lessons, teacher Chris told him about magic. He told Ray a lot about it. He was too interested in it. As it turns out, he has a talent for magic, so now he can already use simple magic, such as cooling or heating. He wants to see if he can use other magic. Ray puts on a serious face and thinks that for the sake of brother Jean, he has no choice. To apply magic, Chris advises visualizing the result. Ray imagines a transparent ball with a quartz flower inside, filled with water from the surrounding air. Now Ray understands that he needs to throw the sphere high enough to be seen from afar. He needs to imagine that gravity does not act on the sphere, so it will fly. Although Ray has little magical power, he has no right to make a mistake. Ray raises his hands up. The temperature of the sphere's shell increases sharply, while the water inside remains cold, and then explodes in the sky. John, Maria, and Chris see the explosion. Ray understands that when you want to protect your family, you become stronger. At this time, everyone in the palace was alarmed, because an explosion was heard from the southern side of the palace, and everyone decided that they were attacked. The man standing by the window said that everything was very interesting. Smoke from the explosion was heard in the southern garden. Chris and Maria saw smoke. John also saw this signal. Ray raised his hands and asked to save his brother Jean. Chris suddenly appears, calling for Ray and Jean. When Ray tries to explain the situation, Chris picks him up, protecting them both and wondering how he could have missed the intruder entering the garden. Chris offers Raymond to wait in his arms, surprised that he did not sense the enemy. Raymond confirms that he created the explosion, but insists that saving Jean is more important now. Chris turns to the transmitter and says that this is Chris Nyarukos reporting that the Southern Garden urgently needs doctors. After a while, Jean is put on a stretcher. Chris approaches Raymond and says that everything will be fine now. Jean suddenly asks the people to stop and turns to Ray. Ray approaches Jean and Jean thanks Raymond. Chris watches Jean and says something about this explosion. Raymond says he conjured up the explosion. John comes up behind him and puts his hand on his shoulder. The young man says he can confirm that Raymond is not lying. People whisper about Raymond's extraordinary magical talent, comparing him to Bert. There are concerns that he, being Maya's son, could pose a threat given Giancarlo's condition. Raymond realizes that his mother's constant admonitions to become a king make him an object of suspicion. Today, on his birthday, the negative attitudes of those around him are intensified because of his background and actions. Raymond, worried, asks Chris to bring him back to the room and find out about Jean's condition. But suddenly Raymond slaps Chris on the hand. Then he firmly says that he can get there himself. Then he runs away. Chris did not understand what happened, and then asks His Highness to wait. Maria turns around and sees Raymond behind her. Ray asks Maria to listen. The girl approaches and asks what happened. Raymond asks what he should do now. The girl gets scared, seeing the expression on his face. Since birth, Raymond wondered why he was reborn and retained the memory of his past life. The older brothers are busy with their roles. Frederick helps their father. Andre and Orlando study diplomacy. Bertrand teaches. John demonstrates musical talent and charisma, and Jean is kind and draws well. Raymond is searching for his place, feeling pressure from his mother. He has no obvious talents and does not strive for heroism, but wants to become stronger and find himself. Raymond wonders why, as a prince, he cannot leave his room. Why is he ignored by his brothers and despised by his servants? He longs for the understanding that Jean showed and hopes to eventually accept his position. The young man begins to cry because he is very lonely. Maria presses him to her chest and turns to Mr. Raymond. She asks Raymond not to keep his tears inside, because she will always be with him and will not go anywhere. That is why she asks Raymond not to keep his tears inside. Ray starts to cry, and Maria says that she understands how he feels, so she asks him to tell her everything. A few days later, Maria comes into the room and asks if Raymond really won't be coming out today. The young man says that even if he goes out, he will regret it, so he will stay in the room. Raymond has become a real recluse. Raymond is tired of constant conversations about him and is indifferent to other people's words. He is irritated that his mother put the responsibility on him when she herself could have helped. Maria says that Jean and John sent Ray an invitation to tea. Lemon is surprised that the letter came not only from Jean, but also from John. Maria says that it is true, and they invite the young man to the southern garden. Raymond refuses to leave his room except for the east garden, citing his position in the royal family. He decides to remain a recluse for the next 7 years. Chris enters the room and asks Ray again about the explosion in the garden. Ray irritably replies that he already answered that question. He sees Chris's depressed face and is surprised. Ray apologizes and says he shouldn't have raised his voice, but he thinks he was just sent to ask that. Chris says he's not offended at all. Chris says that if it's too unpleasant for Ray to remember, then he apologizes. Ray says that it's okay. The boy then asks what Chris wanted to know. Chris asks if the boy wouldn't mind talking to him. Raymond smiles, telling Chris that he can't refuse him. Chris wonders why others perceive Raymond this way and claims that he doesn't want the throne. Raymond is glad that at least Chris believes that. Chris says Raymond is too kind. Raymond tells Chris not to worry about him because they will never leave him. Chris says that Ray is unarguable. Chris says that when he is really old, he will stay on Raymond's side. Ray then asks why Chris came here anyway. The man apologizes and then asks if Ray can go somewhere with him, namely the North Garden. Raymond thinks about how he recently vowed to become a real recluse, but he lied. Then he hears the maids whispering and begins to cover his face with his bangs. Raymond feels uncomfortable in the narrow corridor, but encourages Chris to ignore the conversations of those around him. To change the subject, he asks to talk about the Northern Garden. Suddenly, a man standing nearby starts talking. He said that there are 2 northern gardens. In one grows the flowers of the Sibyl. The contrast between the blue sky and the flowers is beautiful, and he likes it very much. Raymond recognizes the man as his brother Bertrand, the second prince. Bertrand offers to take him into the garden and have a chat. After a while, they arrive at the second northern garden. Raymond notices an unusual flower. Bertrand asks if this is the first time Raymond has seen this flower. It is called Fiogar. This warm shade is not seen in Sibyl. Raymond feels cold for the first time, and Chris explains that in this world the climate is constant. Warm countries are always warm, and cold countries are always cold. The boundaries between them are clear, as if separated by a magical curtain. Bertrand puts his hand inside the veil and says that it is better to feel it than to listen to stories, and then he goes inside. Ray realizes it's magic and then follows his brother. He sees a huge winter garden. All the trees were covered in ice, and the earth and sky were white. Chris asks Ray to put on his uniform, and he says that he will carry him in his arms. Then he notices the flowers that Bertrand showed him, but the color is different. The man says that these flowers change color depending on the temperature, so in cold places they have this purple or blue tint. Raymond asks Bertrand the name of the tree. He says it is Libao, but it is sometimes confused with hoarfrost. Raymond notes that hoarfrost is a layer of ice, and Libao is a tree made of ice. Bertrand praises Ray for the correct answer and expresses hope that he will show the same knowledge at school. Surprised, Ray follows his brother into the hut. Ray asks about the hut. Bertrand says it is a hut. He says his servant should have prepared the tea by now. Ray thinks that this hut is larger than a traditional Japanese house. Bertrand says that Chris is probably freezing too, in his shirt. The man replies that he is not, because he is covered in fur. Besides, he is holding His Highness in his arms, so he is very warm. Raymond begins to beam. Even though he says he is covered in fur, it is impossible for him not to be cold. He says that the teacher has great self-control and is also a real beauty. Ray considers the teacher ideal. Bertrand calls Ray and Chris to go inside. After a while, Raymond and Bertrand are sitting at the table. Ray realizes that even though they are on the terrace, it is warm here. Bertrand says that they will get straight to business. Bertrand asks seriously how the young man was able to conjure up such a large explosion. Raymond replies that he caused the explosion with water vapor. Bertrand is surprised that Ray was able to collect water from thin air and admits that he had no idea about it. Ray realizes that the locals do not know basic scientific concepts. Ray explains that when water boils, steam is created that disappears. Remembering his lessons from Japan, he suggests that this steam remains in the air. Bertrand smiles, understanding his reasoning. Bertrand stands up, extends his hand, and offers Raymond a teaching position at the academy. He believes that it is unfair to hide Raymond's abilities. Raymond is surprised by such a serious offer. Raymond thought about it. Raymond agrees to teach elementary education, but Bertrand specifies that it is secondary education, where the basics of witchcraft are taught. Raymond will be engaged in magical research at the highest level. Bertrand is sure that this research is important for their world. Each kingdom has an academy. Central Academy is the largest. The third grade is for commoners and low-ranking aristocrats. Secondary education includes specializations such as magic. Only those who received excellent grades in middle and high school become teachers. Brother Bertrand is a professor at the academy who doesn't know that there is water in the atmosphere. The protagonist believes that this world is still far from Japan and doesn't want to learn. Bertrand is sure that ignoring Raymond's intelligence is a loss for society. He says that he will tell Bertrand everything he knows, and he, in turn, will be able to publish it all in his own name. The man slams his fist on the table and begins to get incredibly angry. Bertrand says he won't appropriate his younger brother's research. Raymond apologizes. Bertrand does too. He says he won't be satisfied with career advancement on someone else's work. He talks to Raymond and realizes that he is much smarter than Bertrand himself and has a talent of sorts. He doesn't want his brother's talent to be shut down because of his mother, and it's not just his talent. To be honest, Bertrand is worried about Raymond. Raymond realizes that the meeting at the cabin is arranged for a secret conversation. The mother is surrounded by loyal servants who would oppose the separation of the brothers. Ray wonders if Chris is involved in this plan. The young man realizes that it must have been a lot of trouble to pull this off and to find such a place. Raymond says that brother Bertrand is very cunning. Bertrand smiles and says that it would be better to call him a tactician. Raymond asks if Bertrand is satisfied with the information he has received. He answers in the affirmative, but mentions the questions that have arisen. In the silence of the hut, the brothers decide to continue the discussion. Until now, no one had taken Ray, who was a 5-year-old child, seriously. Only picture books and toys for children. For him, with the mind and values of an adult, this was too much. Ray asks if the demi-humans have the abilities of both races. Bertrand replies that they are closer to non-humans in appearance. Ray asks if his brother has studied their blood. Bertrand denies it. Ray claims that one cannot judge the nature of demi-humans by appearance alone. The brother does not communicate with Ray as with a 5-year-old. The hero's goal is to find out why Jean's body is so weak. Children born from a mixture of races always have some kind of defect. Ray's father sought to establish ties with the United Kingdom by taking Sophia, the daughter of the Elven King, as his concubine. The children of this union, Jean and Giovanni, were found to be defective, as everyone feared. Jean's body is very weak, and he is always tired and anemic. John's body is fine, but he cannot use even the most basic magic. Ray tries to understand why this happened, because the reasons are still unknown. Bertrand suggests that the problems are related to the differences in races. Humans are the lower race, non-humans are the higher. The organism of the half-humans cannot withstand the energy of the higher races, causing weakening and defensive reactions. Humans use magic through talent, while non-humans use it by nature. Half-breeds become outcasts due to their physical resemblance to non-humans and their reputation for misfortune. Ray realizes that it's all so obvious. He says that the problem could be human DNA. Bertrand said that magic depends on talent. Dark skin is dominant, passed on to children, as are the non-human traits of half-breeds. Ray believes that children of mixed marriages inherit both races. Magical abilities depend on talent, so half-breeds can wield magic if they are talented. Bertrand is surprised that half-breeds can have magical powers, but not use them without talent. He asks why their bodies are weak. Ray says that the answer is to study the differences between humans and non-humans. He asks who lives longer. Bertrand says non-humans, and confirms that they are active and eat differently. Ray says what will happen if non-humans don't eat right. Elves eat from nature. Beastmen eat raw meat. Lizardmen replenish their strength with water. They all eat differently than humans. Half-breeds have inherited the human digestive system, but have difficulty digesting food due to a lack of nutrients. Bertrand asks if Ray recommends feeding Giancarlo human food. Ray is surprised and asks if Jean eats elven food. Bertrand confirms. Fatigue and anemia. If you think about it, these are all symptoms of malnutrition. Ray wonders why he didn't think of this right away. It's so obvious. Ray asks why no one thought for 10 years that it might be simple malnutrition. Bertrand asks what malnutrition is. He says Ray's theory sounds plausible. He suggests that he open a medical school. Ray knew that science in this world was completely undeveloped, which meant that medical knowledge here was at a terrible level. Raymond slammed his hands on the table and told everyone to immediately bring meat and fish to Brother Jean, and also more rice and soybeans. Then his gaze was full of malice, and his loud voice thundered through the room. Chris whispered that he never wanted to see him in such a state again. The young man apologized for having to see this. 1 year has passed. Maria comes into Raymond's room and says that Mr. Giancarlo and Mr. Giovanni have arrived. Ray tells them to come in. Jean asks Ray how he is doing, and John says that they came today too. Ray turns and says that they saw him yesterday. From that day on, Jean began to eat normally and quickly felt better. Brother John came to apologize for what happened in the garden and also thanked him. Now he and Ray got along. Jean offers to make tea for Maria, noticing Ray's tie. He remembers that he made the tie himself, and Ray thanks him for the gift, remembering the moment in the southern garden. John asks if Ray really spends all day in his room. Ray says he has fun as it is. He has fencing lessons with Chris, training with Bertrand, and frequent visits from Jean and John. Jean notices Ray's long hair and playfully slaps him across the face, asking him to show his eyes. Then 2 hairpins appear on Ray's forehead. Jean takes Ray by the face and says that he really likes his beautiful eyes. Raymond says that he has the same color eyes. Jean distracts them and says that he has brought Shen with him today. Shen is one of the musical instruments that Brother John can play. It seems that this instrument is used in the celebration of meeting others in the United Kingdom. John starts playing the instrument, and Jean sings a song. The whole room lights up with a beautiful light. Ray starts clapping her hands and says it was just wonderful. Jean and John blush with embarrassment. Jean falls to the floor and tells John that he has such a cute little brother. John pats him on the back and says that he is his little brother. Ray thinks that few of his family talk to him, so John and Jean are incredibly special to him. Raymond says clearly into the whole room that he loves John and Jean. The 2 brothers turn towards Ray and then begin to tremble in surprise. They run to Ray and hug him. Jean hugs Ray and says that he loves him very much too. John strokes Ray's head and says that he doesn't hate him either, because he is another dear little brother. Raymond smiles. He says that he really loves them very much. After some time, already at night, Raymond's mother calls him and says that he must definitely become the heir. His father will someday notice Ray because he really deserves to be the heir. Raymond's mother tells him that he has his father's eyes and her hair and insists that he become heir and ruler. For 6 years now, he has listened humbly, knowing that she will accept no other answer. The woman looks at her son madly and calls him her beloved Raymond and says that only he remains by her side. She begins to cry and asks her son not to leave her alone. Raymond notices the loneliness of his mother, who is shunned because of her words. She is anxious around his father, thinking that he despises her and now avoids her. Raymond's mother has always been interested in his father, which is why she wants Ray to be the heir. She always sulks when no one takes her seriously. As a result, she became very dependent on her son, the only one she could talk to. The mother asks Ray if he loves her. The young man does not know what to answer. Raymond secretly dreams of being an ordinary child, but agrees with his mother. She assures him that he cannot hate her and leaves. Then Maria offers the young man hot milk, and he agrees. Ultimately, he is the only one who notices that his parents are growing apart. He wonders if he should intervene and if the child should change anything. He understands that he cannot give up so easily. Just complaining about the problems will not help him get rid of them. Maria enters the room and the young man addresses her. He says that he wants to talk to his father and then asks how he can meet him. Maria is surprised. After some time, Raymond came to his father. The man said that this was a great rarity. He hugs his son and says that his beloved Raichik wanted to meet him for the first time. Raymond turns to his father and says that he is no longer a little child. The eldest brother and first prince, Frederick Centoro, puts his hand between Raymond and his father and then says that Raymond is having a serious conversation. Raymond understands that his brother Frederick saved him from his father's caresses. The man turns to his son and asks what he wanted to talk about with his beloved daddy. The boy says that it may sound a little rude, but he asks his father to stop his antics and start communicating with his mother again. The man was perplexed by what the boy was saying. A man complains that his mother doesn't like him. Raymond blames his father for her suffering and wonders how he can't see that she is a tsundere. The young man sarcastically asks if his father imagines himself as the master of a harem. His father and brother stand silently, not understanding anything. Raymond states that his father irritates him and asks how many women he has had, noting his mother's kindness. The man asks, puzzled, how his son learned such things. Raymond only smirks, considering the question unimportant. Raymond grabs the man's face and tells him that his mother adores him but is shy because of her inexperience. Then he asks why she wants to make him her heir. The man thinks it's for power, but Raymond says otherwise, because she loves Raymond's father very much. He quotes her saying that he has her dark hair and his green eyes. He is so cute. If he can become the heir to the throne, then he can finally come to her. Even if a man doesn't love her, she really wants him to come and at least visit her. The man asks his son if Maya is home. Raymond is sure that she is. Then the man suggests that they go to her together. Frederick refuses to go, saying that his father often forgets about business when it comes to family and offers to finish the job himself. Raymond apologizes, but Frederick dryly asks him to forget about it. The man picks up Raymond, noticing that he has gained weight, and shares how hard it is to be king, as he is lonely and rarely gets to see his son. Raymond sympathetically asks if his father is also lonely and receives an affirmative answer. The man says that Raymond's mother dreamed of being the main wife, but became the fourth. He values her above all, but, trying to strengthen the country, he distanced himself, missing the main thing. He says he sometimes wonders what he lives for. The man smiles and says he has strange thoughts, then tells Ray he probably doesn't understand. Raymond realizes that his previous opinion of his father as a frivolous person needs to be revised. He honestly says that he loves his mother more because he spends more time with her. These words upset the man because they are true. Raymond grabs his father's cheek and then kisses him on the cheek and says that he loves his father too. After all, he's doing everything he can for all of them, and Ray knows it. The man says his son is a real angel and then tries to kiss him, but Raymond avoids it and says they need to get into the room now. The man is about to knock on the door and says it's time to take full responsibility. Maya is reading a flower to see if Abram loves her when she hears a knock at the door. Allowing him to enter, she sees Abram, who greets her joyfully and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Maya remains unperturbed. Then she starts to shine and blush. Maya panics and grabs the curtain and asks why Abram came in. He apologizes, but she's outraged, considering the apology's pointless, and asks him not to do it again. Raymond slaps his father on the back and says that his mother meant that next time he should warn her so that she could dress up. Maya calls her son, embarrassed. She says she won't preen for Abram. Raymond says she doesn't mean it. Maya screams and asks whose side Ray is on. The boy says he's on his mother's side, but calls his father to hug her. Abram stands dumbfounded and then tries to hold back his laughter. He starts laughing and says that he didn't know that Maya is actually very nice. He approaches Maya, who is hiding behind a curtain. The girl shudders and asks Abram not to come closer. Raymond translates this as the girl being very shy and asking not to come closer. Abram says that it is good that Ray translates. He asks for forgiveness and then hugs Maya. He apologizes to her and says that he did not understand her true feelings and then calls himself stupid. He says that he will now spend more time with the girl. Tears start flowing from Maya's eyes. The girl starts crying and asks why Abram decided to say all this only now. The man says that he understands this, but asks for forgiveness. The girl says that she will never forgive him, and she cries in his arms. Raymond guesses that his mother, when she was young, was in awe of her powerful father, and marriage was a test for her. She fell in love with him for his kind heart, although her father did not understand how to behave with a girl so much younger than him. Raymond strokes their heads and says that now they will talk enough to each other, and also, he turns to his mother and says that if she cannot express her love in words, then she should show it with actions. He says he went to see brother Frederick and then turns around. He says he wants a little sister. Maya starts to get very embarrassed, and Abram asks the young man if a younger brother would suit him. Maya gets even more embarrassed, and Raymond says that a younger brother is also very good. He enters the study and tells his brother Frederick that he has returned. A sullen Frederick asks where his father is. Raymond says that he is talking to his mother. He asks if he can be here. Frederick answers in the affirmative. Bernardo identifies himself as Frederick's servant, and Raymond surprises him by revealing that he is of the Bernini family. It turns out that Bernardo and Frederick are cousins, thanks to the first queen, Karina. Bernardo Affer mentions that young Frederick was not particularly interested in the affairs of the duchy. Frederick is surprised by this story. Bernardo offers Raymond tea, and Raymond thanks him. Raymond explains his formality by Bernardo's age, and suddenly announces plans to move to the city, shocking both interlocutors. Raymond asks Frederick what's wrong. Frederick asks why Raymond decided to move to the city. Raymond does not want to inherit the throne, fearing scandals, and intends to leave. Frederick objects, claiming that Raymond will stay unless he is forced to. The young man agrees. Raymond says that brother Frederick hates Raymond. Frederick turns to stone and Bernardo laughs. Frederick warmly calls Raymond his little brother, but Bernardo jokes that Raymond is better and Frederick has a scary face. Raymond joins in the joke, noticing the exaggerated expression between his brother's eyebrows. Because of this face, Frederick is constantly avoided by John, and Jean immediately begins to cry. Bernardo tells Frederick that Raymond always thought he hated him. Raymond tells his brother that he had better talk more. Frederick says it's just a disgrace, and Bernardo says he's just destroyed him. Frederick clears his throat and asks Raymond if he could chat to him from time to time. Raymond says he would be happy to have a cup of tea with his older brother, if that's all right. Frederick begins to beam with joy. Bernardo says that Frederick is lucky because he likes Raymond. Frederick blushes and asks him to stop. The man promises to let him know when the tea is ready, and asks Bernardo to tell Raymond this. Raymond allows Bern to call him Ray, and he is happy. Frederick, noticing this, shyly asks if he can call him that too. Raymond thinks that Frederick's brotherly instincts have kicked in. Raymond agrees to his brother's request. Frederick mutters Ray's name under his breath, but Raymond asks him to speak more clearly. The man strokes his brother's head affectionately and expresses his joy at the upcoming tea party. Raymond is surprised, and Bernardo explains that Frederick was very worried when Mr. Giancarlo fell ill. Ray says that he will also wait for that day. Then he spreads his arms out to the side. He says that since they are a family, they can hug. He tells Frederick that he can spend some time being like his father, who hugs and kisses him all the time. Frederick says Raymond is right. Then he kneels down and hugs his brother. He tells him to come more often. Raymond agrees. After a while, Ray returns with Bernardo. He is met by Jean and John. Then Jean asks if Ray really came with Bernardo. Ray says that Bern just walked him out. Bernardo says he hasn't seen Mr. Giancarlo and Mr. Giovanni for a long time. Jean and John are scared. Raymond says what Bern did to those two. Bern says that Jean and John's reaction is beautiful. Ray asks what Bern did to them. Bern says that Frederick has a scary face, and he just stood behind and looked at Jean and John when they were very scared. Raymond punches Bern in the side. Jean reproaches Bern, calling him a scoundrel. Bern apologizes and leaves. Jean asks Raymond if everything is all right with him and learns that he met Bern and communicated with Frederick. Jean and John are surprised that Ray talked to Frederick. John asks if it was scary. Ray says Frederick is nice and invites them for tea. John declines and Jean follows him. Raymond says that if they change their minds, they can always come. Jean agrees, unable to resist Ray's request. John, admitting that he does not dislike Frederick, promises to come if Ray asks. Raymond is pleased and invites them to visit again. A few days later, Maria comes into Raymond's room and says that an invitation to tea has arrived from Mr. Frederick. Raymond asks Maria to prepare a souvenir, as he is participating in the event. She agrees, and he notices her good mood. Chris then appears, to whom Ray is grateful for the company. Raymond is thinking that Chris is already 30 and Maria is 24, and it is time for them to get married and have children. At this point, Bertrand enters and asks where Raymond is going. This is unusual, because Ray usually spends time with only him, John, and Jean. Ray says that today he is having tea with his brother Frederick. Bertrand asks if he can come too. Ray agrees. Maria returns and says that she can't find any sweets. Ray says that they can't go empty-handed, and Bertrand drags Raymond along and says that they have to go. Bernardo meets them and greets Mr. Bertrand as well. Bertrand says that they haven't seen Bernardo for a long time. Suddenly, Bernardo says that Mr. Andre will also come today. Bertrand is surprised with disgust. Ray asks what is wrong. Bernardo says that they have some family problems. Bertrand asks Bernardo not to call them family because he does not want to have anything to do with Andre. Suddenly, Andre enters the room and greets Raymond, saying that this is the first time they are talking. Raymond sees Andre and thinks that he is one of his brothers and the third prince of the kingdom, Andre Centoro. Ray asks his brother if he has decided to come to the tea party too. The young man says that he is very glad to meet him and extends his hand. Suddenly, Bertrand snatches Raymond away and tells Andre not to touch him. Andre frowned sharply. Bertrand stood and held Raymond close to him. He told Andre not to touch Raymond. Andre was indignant and asked his brother what the problem was. Bertrand said that Andre had already spoiled his older brother too much, and that was why he had become too relaxed. Raymond began to get upset and angry about this because he did not understand why his brothers were arguing with each other like that. Raymond turned to Frederick and wished him good morning. He said that Bertrand and Andre really had a bad relationship. Frederick said that they didn't hate each other, but they were always fighting about him. Raymond tried to find out why the brothers were arguing over Frederick, but their shouts interrupted him. Andre said that he just wanted to help his brother Frederick, and Bertrand said that it meant not only in negotiations, but Andre also poked his nose into his personal affairs. Andre says that he only helps Frederick in difficult cases and criticizes Bertrand's strictness. He warns that if he continues to do everything for his brother, he will not learn to communicate himself. Frederick sighed and told Raymond that he was very bad at his attitude, even though he was the crown prince, so Bertrand and Andre were helping him. Ray said that it was like they were arguing about how to raise a child. Raymond can't take it anymore and shouts at his brothers to stop arguing. Bertrand and Andre immediately fall silent and freeze, looking at Raymond. Raymond reproaches Bertrand for wanting to argue with Andre. Bertrand objects that Frederick, as heir, must have the necessary skills, and communication with Andre interferes with this. Raymond asks Bertrand to listen to him and says that everyone has their own learning rhythm. He then points out to Andre that Frederick is old enough to learn to speak on his own, and Andre will not be able to take care of him forever. Raymond is about to say something to Frederick, who perks up, seeing his brother angry for the first time. But when he realizes that Frederick has realized everything, Raymond falls silent, and Frederick instantly becomes sad. Raymond suggests that everyone start drinking tea. After a while, dessert was brought out, and Ray said that Maria had prepared a very beautiful meal. Frederick replied that it seemed that these dishes were popular in the Ost Empire, and he had always wanted to try them. Frederick then asks Raymond about wanting to go to the academy, and then asks what he planned to study there. There are many departments at Centoro Academy. Among them, there is a faculty of magic, and Brother Bertrand teaches there. Raymond says he was thinking about enrolling in the faculty of magic, but given the opportunity to study with Bertrand, he is leaning towards the faculty of knights. Frederick realizes that Raymond has truly decided to leave home. Suddenly, everyone fell silent. Andre and Bertrand panicked and asked Raymond if he was joking when he said he wanted to leave the royal family. Bertrand asked his brother where he was going. At that moment, a cup fell. Maria, who brought it, trembled and almost cried at this news. Raymond said that he was not yet sure that he would go to the city. He would not go anywhere until he saw her fiancé, and until Master Chris found himself a worthy bride. Even by force, he would not be forced to leave here. Andre asks Raymond that if Maria never marries, then Ray will remain in the royal palace forever. Ray, with a cold look, told Andre not to even think about ruining Maria's happy family life because of such a trifle. He threatens him to try, and Ray will never forgive him. In any case, he won't give her to the first man who comes along. It has to be a strong and responsible man, ready for the trials. Bernardo said that Ray really cares about Maria. Raymond says that it is natural, because Maria is like an older sister to him. The girl begins to cry with happiness. Frederick discovers that Maria is putting off marriage until Raymond is older, and notes that she is already 24. Raymond abruptly cuts off the subject, threatening to stop communicating with Frederick if he tries to arrange their marriage. Frederick is terrified. Bertrand says that since the conversation turned to marriage with Grimaldi, Raymond's future bride from the Balzer house will clearly be unhappy. Raymond asks if he really has a future bride. Frederick replies that she is about his age. Raymond thinks that this is a problem, so it would probably be better to go to the city. Bertrand tells Raymond that everything is fine. He roughly understands what Ray is thinking now. Whatever happens, he should not worry, because his brothers will protect him. Andre says that he is worried not only about this good-for-nothing Frederick, he is even ready to cooperate with Bertrand. so he tells Raymond not to be afraid because they will always be there. Raymond asks about the factions at court, and Bernardo reports that the most influential factions at the moment are those of Raymond's mother Maya and Frederick's mother Karina. Maya's faction seeks to elevate Raymond, while Karina's supporters see him as a tool. Raymond notes that his mother is just a decoration in this struggle. Bertrand is amazed that Ray called his mother so directly. Andre reminds them that they are discussing the academy and asks why Raymond chose the knight's faculty, since Bertrand's magic faculty seems preferable. Raymond says that since Andre asked, he wants to be like Master Chris. Chris winces and apologizes. Andre asks where this admiration comes from. Raymond says that even when he was a little kid, he treated him like a real gentleman, so there is no reason not to admire Chris. As a man, he admires strong people, so his goal is to leave, gain skills, and come back. He imagines Chris telling him that he has become stronger. Then he asks what about this attack, and if Ray can withstand it. Then he imagines himself barely standing on his feet, holding the sword with all his might. Chris will come up to him and tell him that it's not the end, and then hold out his hand. Frederick says Raymond likes Chris very much. Ray says he just adores him. He's a real, reliable gentleman. He has such steel muscles, like a real man. He drops to his knees to make eye contact with Ray. He's not afraid to get them dirty. He always asks permission when he picks him up, and he's willing to let his inner child out if he needs to. Chris was absolutely amazed. Ray asks everyone to look at him and then says, "How can you be so cute and cool at the same time?" Frederick asks Chris to look after Raymond. The man says that His Highness Frederick can rely on him. Frederick says that Raymond prefers the swordsman Chris to his brothers. Bertrand regrets not being able to support Raymond sooner. Andre attributes this to factional differences. Ray says that Andre will now be able to talk to him whenever he wants. Andre smiles and hugs his little brother, saying that this is their agreement. Then another prince comes into the room and says that Bert and Anne are here too. It is Orlando who has arrived. The man is delighted that Raymond is here too. Raymond greets his brother and says that this is the first time they can talk. The fourth prince of Orlando Centoro. He studied abroad in the Occidense kingdom. He fell in love with the princess of that kingdom at first sight and got engaged to her. Orlando and Frederick have the same mother, but they are very different. Orlando tells Raymond that he lives with Fran, and Fran is his wife. He also says that he has wanted to talk to his younger brother for a long time. Raymond asks if Orlando really lives in Occidense. Orlando says that after the academy he went to Occidence, and jokes about Frederick, remembering how Andre looked like a girl. Bertrand confirms this. Andre is indignant that Bertrand acts so much older, even though they are only a year apart. Orlando comments on their constant arguing. Frederick changes the subject, asking Orlando about Madame Fran. Orlando blushes and asks if Frederick really wants to talk about Fran. He says Fran is very nice. If he talks to another girl, Fran gets very jealous and sulks, but this only makes her nicer. Then he hugs her from behind. She puts her hand on Orlando's hand and calms down and is cutely embarrassed. Orlando says that Fran wears peach and gold dresses to match his hair, and he wears orange jewelry and clothing to match her eyes. Andre bursts into the conversation and asks Frederick to stop playing along and says that there is no need to listen to him at all, because he has, as always, exploded. Andre says that it irritates him. Frederick asks Andre and Orlando to calm down, but Orlando says that Anne follows fashion, so he wants to ask what souvenir to bring Fran. Raymond listens to all this. Then the young man realizes that chaos has reigned in the room. Orlando wants to leave, but Frederick persuades him to stay to control the situation. Raymond doubts the usefulness of his presence, but Frederick jokes that the brothers are funny, and it is worth staying for the fun. Frederick notices Ray's look, which seems to say that he is fed up with everything. Frederick is scared. Raymond then starts yelling for everyone to stop quickly. He asks the brothers whether they really came here just to quarrel or to drink tea. Orlando says he just wanted to ask what to get Fran. Raymond replies that he should think about it himself, because the girl would be happier if Orlando himself chose a gift for her. Bertrand and Andre apologize to Raymond. Andre says that Bertrand still irritates him. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and then Bernardo asks the guests to come in. All the brothers turn around and smile in surprise. Giancarlo and Giovanni came into the room. Jean hid behind his brother's back, embarrassed, and Gian apologized for their lateness. Jean awkwardly said that they had heard that Raymond had gone to tea with his older brother Frederick. John said that they knew it was rude to come uninvited, but he hoped the brothers wouldn't mind if they joined. Raymond immediately jumped up from his seat after his words and ran to hug Jean and John. Jean became embarrassed and asked what had come over Raymond. Raymond looked at John and said that he would hug him later. Jean said that in that case he would squeeze Raymond. John awkwardly, shyly said to hug him too because he was waiting too. Ray hugs John and then says that the hug was successfully finished. Raymond turns to his brothers, who are looking at their little brother in complete shock. Bernardo said that Ray can act like a normal 6-year-old. Andre also wanted Ray to hug him. Frederick said that Ray is on such a good terms with Jean and John, and Bertrand said that Ray can be affectionate too. Raymond said why he can't be gentle. He's still a normal kid. He says it's like Bertrand with magic. The boy says Andre and Orlando had their first normal conversation today. Usually they don't quarrel and don't notice anything around them. Andre says it's hard to deny. Raymond turns to Bernardo and says that brother Frederick will be a gentle king rather than a strict king. Bertrand asks if that's really how he rates Frederick. The kingdom is created by common efforts. No matter how talented the king is, without the people he is, nobody, so all brothers must help him. Raymond also says that he will also help his brother Frederick if he becomes king. Frederick is embarrassed and says that he has a very cool younger brother. Bernardo is happy for Raymond. The protagonist thanks for the praise. Raymond takes Jean and John by the hands and asks the other brothers to make room for them. Orlando was delighted and said that all 7 brothers were here. Raymond also said that he did not expect Jean and John to come today. John said that they promised to come. Jean turns to his brother Frederick and asks him if they really could come today. Frederick, with an angry face, says that there is no problem. Raymond realized that he had a very scary face. He was probably just very happy that Jean had spoken to him. Jean began to shake with fear and asked Frederick for forgiveness. An awkward silence hung between them. Raymond was on edge and then said they were boring. He tells Frederick that only teenagers and children can't express their feelings properly. He asks his brother Frederick to say what's on his mind straight. Frederick broke out in a cold sweat and then told Jean that he was not angry. He was just not very good at communicating and was still learning. He apologized to Jean if he had scared him. Jean panics and says that Frederick has nothing to apologize for. Raymond tells Jean not to spoil Frederick. Frederick says that he knows he looks very scary, but he wants to do everything he can to get along with Jean and John. Jean is very surprised by this. Jean says he had no idea about it, and that's why he always avoided Frederick, but now he understands everything. John puts his hand on Jean's shoulder and says that he too avoided Frederick and didn't understand anything, but now everything is different. He says that although he is not a talented magician like Brother Bertrand, not a skilled diplomat like Brother Andre, and he is not as energetic as Brother Orlando, therefore all he can do is play music. However, he wants to get along with his brothers, even though he is a half-blood who can't even use magic. Frederick stops him and says that none of this matters. A child born from a marriage between a human and a non-human is no different from any other, so Jean and John are members of his family. That's the most important thing. No matter what, he will take care of them. He smiles awkwardly and tells John and Jean that they are his precious little brothers, so he will never turn his back on them. John and Jean are shocked by Frederick's speech. They start crying, and Jean says that he always wanted to be closer with all his brothers. Frederick was very surprised, but Raymond told his brother that this was his chance to comfort Jean and John. He shouted at him to hug them quickly. Frederick asks not to ask the impossible of him, but Raymond asks what is difficult about it. Raymond is very serious. Frederick puts his hands on Giancarlo and Giovanni's shoulders and then says that he's not very good at socializing, but he wants to get to know the two of them better, so he asks if they wouldn't mind visiting him from time to time. Jean happily agrees, and they rush at Frederick, telling him not to worry, because they will definitely come. Then Jean wipes away his tears and asks for forgiveness, saying that he has calmed down now. John covers his face with his hands and says that he also asks for forgiveness because he is very ashamed that he showed himself in such a way. Andre says there is nothing to it because the boy looks quite nice. Usually they would not approach them at all. Raymond says there is no need to tease them. Orlando says he's so happy because he used to think only Ray was so nice, but it turns out he's not the only one. Jean says Orlando's brother is making fun of them. Bertrand says that the factions are not taking action now, as they were during Maya's isolation. It's not like the time when they were stuck in the middle of factional struggles. The power of Maya's aristocrats has fallen sharply since Maya and their father began to communicate again. At the moment, at best, they can offer a potential bride so that a new prince can appear. In addition, they are suppressed by the aristocrats of Karina. Therefore, he asks the younger brothers not to be constrained and to rely on the elders. Frederick asks Jean his age and says he is 11 years old, then asks John if he really didn't go to high school. John said he couldn't use magic or fence, so his father sent him to music lessons. Last year, Jean had health problems, so he didn't go to school. The average age to enter high school is 14, although the minimum age required to enter is 12. There is no upper limit, so John will still be able to enter, but there are many who do not enter the academy and find a personal tutor. Andre asks, what about Jean? Jean says that until his health gets better, he is not going to enter the academy. The brothers then say that the main problem today is entering society and finding wives for Jean and Raymond. This is the problem of all three suitors, including Giovanni. Bernardo asks if Raymond has a fiancé. Andre replies that his father is not yet completely sure, especially since the aristocrats of the Maya faction will not let this go. Bertrand says it is obvious that members of the Mayan aristocracy will try to marry Raymond. Perhaps they will also try to tie Ray, Giovanni, and Giancarlo more closely. Raymond says he wants to leave. The room fell silent again, and then the brothers began to ask if Ray really wanted to leave. At this time, the man was telling a girl named Leandra that she was already engaged to His Highness, so the fate of the Balzer family depended on her. The girl called the man her father and said that she understood this. The girl stood at the window and prayed. She looked at the sky and asked Mr. Raymond what it was like. A few days later, Jean was painting a portrait of Raymond and asked him if he was really going to leave the house. Raymond said no, but muttered under his breath that it was probably so. Jean asked if it was true. Ray said it was fine and he wasn't going anywhere. Raymond says that if he decides to leave the house, he will lose his right to the throne. He will not lose his family name and will remain a member of the family, so there is no need to be nervous and nothing terrible will happen. Jean starts screaming and asks Raymond not to say that, because he won't allow it. He wants to support Raymond always, because he is a dear member of his family, and he wants Raymond to be happy. He may not be able to do for Raymond what the other older brothers can, but he still doesn't want to have to sacrifice anything. That's his selfish wish. He wants to draw Raymond's baby someday. Raymond thinks that Jean is so upset, although leaving the family is a last resort. In other words, unless he has another way to avoid conflicts in the royal palace. To put it bluntly, it's a lot of trouble, and Ray doesn't think he can handle it all on his own. Except for one thing, his memories of his previous life. Everything is pretty ordinary. He says that Maya's faction might also turn its attention to Jean. He asks his brother to be careful about his social debut next month. He asks if Jean really doesn't want to upset his brother. Jean gives a positive answer. He asks if Ray really loves him. If so, he certainly doesn't want to upset him. He also asks what's the point if he won't be happy. Otherwise, John and his mom will be very upset too. He asks Raymond if he loves his family very much, and then says that he loves everyone in his family very much too. Raymond falls to the ground and says he has the most wonderful older brother. Jean says he has the best younger brother. John appears among the trees and says that it turns out that both of his younger brothers are the best in the world. He was sent by Andre and Frederick. They decided to please their father and sew a new suit for Jean. Andre is very enthusiastic about designing clothes. John asked Jean if he didn't mind going right away because his father had already called the seamstress. Jean said he didn't mind and then said goodbye to Raymond and said they would chat sometime. John then asks if Raymond is serious about leaving home. He says that once Ray turns 14, there is no need to worry because at that age he will go to the academy. He says it's much safer than staying in the palace. Raymond says it's the hair and eyes. I wouldn't want to stand out with my black hair in the Ost Empire and my green eyes in Centoro. John says that this black color can't be covered with powder paint. Raymond asks if he would stand out if he turned his hair gray. The hero understands that he needs to reduce the amount of melanin in his hair, so he decides to use weakening magic. His hair successfully turns white and no one will recognize him. Raymond turns to John and asks him what he thinks. John is shaking all over and doesn't understand what is happening and why Raymond's hair has turned white. John started screaming that Raymond's hair had turned white. He said he had such beautiful hair. He asked if Ray could give it back. A moment later, Raymond adds melanin to his hair, and it becomes dark again. John starts stroking Raymond's head and says he likes this color better. Raymond says there's something they need to think about, and that's marriage. Ray says John didn't seem to want to get married. If he doesn't get into the academy, he won't run away. John said not to worry about it because he was actually going to study music in the United Kingdom, his mother's home country, for a while. Raymond is surprised and says that he has never heard of this before. He asks if the young man will go there with Jean. John replies that Jean has his own interests. Raymond asks if John can part with Jean, but the young man replies that this does not mean that he will never see him again. He will be able to return to Centoro whenever he wants. His home will not go anywhere. Raymond thought John wouldn't want to leave Jean, so he would never leave the palace, but like everyone else, John wants to move forward. Ray says he has really cool brothers. John tells Raymond that when he is in the academy and has the opportunity to go abroad, he can come and visit him. Ray says he will definitely do it. John smiles and says that he will wait for Raymond to arrive in the Elf City. The older brothers congratulated Giancarlo on his first appearance in society. Andre boasted that he really had excellent taste in clothes. Bertrand said he had to admit Andre's talent, and Andre said it was all for his dear little brother. Frederick said he was counting on him when it was Raymond's turn. Meanwhile, Ray was sitting in his room by the window. He wasn't old enough to go out yet, so today he was sitting in his room. Maria, who was standing in the room, asked the gentleman if he needed anything to drink. The young man answered in the affirmative. He was sitting by the window and thinking that Jean was probably having a lot of fun. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door of Raymond's room. The young man got scared. If it was a member of the royal family or a vassal, he would have asked if he could enter the room. He wondered who might be knocking, perhaps a stranger who had gotten lost in the inner part of the palace. He carefully slides down from the windowsill and quietly opens the door. There was a little girl in the hallway who was crying. She was calling for her father, and apparently she was lost. Raymond comes up to her and asks if she is lost. The girl screams in fear. Raymond realized that they were about the same age, but that she had forgotten so far from the main hall. He decided to ask her if everything was okay and if she had gotten lost. He says that everyone should be at the party now, and he is in the other direction. The girl noticed his sparkling eyes. The girl suddenly screamed. Ray asked what was the matter. The girl said that he had black hair and green eyes. She asked if the boy was Mr. Raymond. The hero answered positively and said that they were seeing each other for the first time. He said that his name was Raymond. The girl began to panic. Suddenly, Maria appeared next to them. She asked Raymond what was wrong. The hero said that the girl was lost and needed to be taken to the main hall. They enter the room. Raymond says that she should rest, and then they will show her out. He also says that she must have been very scared, so she should get some tea too. Raymond told the girl that he would get ready and come back, so he asks her to wait here. The girl gives a positive answer. Raymond gets dressed in his room and thinks that since he's going there, he needs to look the part, so he tucks his hair behind his ears and his bright green eyes start to stand out. He enters the room and asks the girl if she has calmed down. Maria asks her if she would like to introduce herself. The girl curtsies and says that she is from the house of Duke Baltzar, and her name is Leandra Baltzar. She is glad to meet Mr. Raymond. The young man says he is glad to meet her. He asks permission to take her to the main hall. Maria asks who the lady came with today. The girl says that she came with her father, Duke Baltzar, but she never met him. Her father came here for work, so she planned to leave before the party started, but the king ordered her to eat sweets. Raymond realizes that her father, Baltzar, is a general. He is said to have inherited his swordsmanship from his predecessor. Raymond's father is very close to General Baltzar. By the way, one of his brothers said that Leandra was one of Raymond's bride candidates. He asks why the girl was walking here alone, since his room is far from the main hall. Leandra made Raymond promise not to laugh. She saw a beautiful garden from her window, so she went out to have a closer look and got lost. Raymond smirks and says that it is very sweet. He thinks it is so childish. Leandra blushes very much at Raymond's smile. Raymond then asks the girl what garden she saw. Leandra did not understand the question, but Raymond said that there were only 5 gardens in the palace. Leandra said that she did not know. Raymond assumes that since it is the garden that was visible from the main hall, it must be the central garden. He says that the girl went and did not give up because she liked it so much. Leandra said that it was very beautiful. Raymond said there were many other gardens to look at, so he would show her those next time. Leandra grabs Raymond's hand and apologizes if her words seem too rude to him, but she asks if the young man will spend the evening with her. Raymond smiles, but apologizes to the girl. She's very scared by this answer and says that it was to be expected. Raymond realizes that Leandra's father, General Baltzar, belongs to Karina's faction and supports Frederick as crown prince. In other words, being close to her would give rise to rumors that Raymond had joined Karina's faction, which was unacceptable. However, he feels Maria's gaze burning into him because you can't make a lady cry. Suddenly, someone shouted at Leandra from the side. Her father Baltzar and Chris were running there. The man said that he was very worried about her. Leandra was delighted to see her father and said that she was lost and that His Highness Raymond had escorted her here. The man looks at the boy. Raymond thought he wanted to get away before he was noticed. The boy says he was very surprised when Mrs. Leandra knocked on his room door. He looked menacingly and said that he thought that someone from this party wanted to meet him secretly. Baltzar was frightened by this appearance of the young man. Raymond smiled and said that he was joking. Baltzar says that the young man was much wittier than he had heard. Come to think of it, this was the first time he had seen Mr. Raymond in person. He really did have the black hair of the Ost Empire and the green eyes of the Centoro Kingdom. He says that it is no wonder that there are people in the royal palace who want to put Prince Raymond on the throne. The boy says he likes it because his hair color is his mother's and his eye color is his father's. Baltzar says these colors suit him. Raymond says he is often told this. Baltzar asks who they are talking about. Raymond said that the man was so interested in it, but it was a secret. He wasn't going to share secrets with people he didn't have a good relationship with. Baltzar replies that it hurts him to hear that, and in his head he wonders who Raymond is on good terms with. He thinks he is with Maya's faction and is planning something behind the scenes. Raymond guesses what Baltzar is thinking and approves of him continuing to wind himself up. Maria watched this whole scene and wondered why Raymond was provoking Baltzar. Raymond smiles and asks Baltzar if he wants to pry into other people's business, because secrets can't be revealed. If he reveals too much, Karina and Maya's factions will focus on trying to find out what's around him, but they still won't find it. Suddenly, Leandra calls Raymond. The young man asks her what is the matter. The girl cannot resist and asks if the young man wants to get engaged to her. Leandra's father was in shock. Raymond didn't understand what was happening, and Chris and Maria blushed with surprise. Baltzar beamed with joy and then asked his daughter if she really liked Prince Raymond. The girl answered in the affirmative. She said she didn't know she would get lost and end up in Raymond's room because that would have been very rude of her, but Mr. Raymond never blamed her. He behaved like a gentleman and walked her to the place of celebration, so he wants to marry Mr. Raymond. Raymond was surprised by this. Baltzar grinned and thought, that's very good. He asked what Raymond would say. He told him that his daughter was extremely smart, so would the young man like to marry her. Raymond is irritated to think that Baltzar wanted Raymond to be engaged to Leandra from the very beginning. He is also frightened by the look that Maria is giving him. The young man takes her hand and asks for forgiveness from Lady Leandra, but he cannot become her fiancé. The young man turns on the whiny mode and says that the problem is not with the girl, but that if she is with him, he will only bother her. Leandra says that if the young man is with her, he will not bother her. Raymond yanks her hand away and says, no way, because no one wants to mess with him. The girl starts to cry. Raymond says that if, when they grow up, she still loves him, then let her tell him these words again. There's something he wants to say now, and that's that. After all, he is a man, so when he grows up, he will be stronger to protect her. The girl started to cry and said that she would wait. She shows her muscles and says that she can protect him too. Raymond thinks that Leandra is a special girl and he is not worthy of her. The young man waves his hand and says goodbye to Leandra and General Baltzar. Chris says that he will see Maria and His Highness Raymond off. Maria turns to the young man and asks if he is sure. Raymond asks what the girl is talking about. Maria says that she is talking about Mrs. Leandra. General Baltzar is the head of the aristocrats of the Karina faction. Raymond could ask for protection from this faction. Raymond says he cannot do so. He says they should take the bait and focus their attention on him. Maria and Chris are surprised. The man asks why Raymond says that. Raymond turns and says he must protect Brother Jean. At this time, John came out to his brother Jean, who was standing on the balcony and breathing fresh air. John asked his brother if he was tired, but Jean gave a negative answer and said that everything was fine. Thanks to Raymond's support, he is fresh and kind. He must be an unbending sixth prince. John said that Jean is a good boy. Jean wonders what Raymond can do now. Jean is looking forward to the day when he too will go out into the world. Maria asks what Ray means by protecting Mr. Giancarlo. Raymond says that they will now assume that Ray is the only one who can remove Frederick as crown prince. However, if we assume that Raymond joins the Karina faction or leaves the royal palace, then the aristocrats of the Maya faction will look for a replacement for him. That's why the next target will be Jean, who has the highest magical power among the brothers. They left him alone because he was sick, but now that he is recovered, Ray is sure that they will not leave him alone. Compared to him, who has memories of his past life, John is an ordinary child. The adults use him for their own purposes. Therefore, Raymond will become a decoy that will distract attention from Jean. The main thing is to escape later. However, the young man will then go to the academy, and there he will change his appearance. At the academy, he will learn a lot and meet many new people, and then there will be training, magic, and fencing. He will have friends equal to him, which he will not be able to get here. Outside the palace walls, he will discover a new world. Until then, he is determined to protect Jean at all costs. Maria is worried about the future of Mr. Raymond. Chris steps forward and says that he will then become a shield that will protect him in all adversity. Raymond says he will never allow this. He says Chris is an honorary nobleman of the kingdom, and he wants to be Raymond's ally. Chris started out as a commoner adventurer, but he became one of the few S-rank adventurers. Now he is as powerful as the dukes. If such a man were to be with Raymond when he grew up, the rumors that he wanted to displace Frederick as crown prince would begin to seem real. Chris would be seen as a competitor for the throne. Chris says that he will improve his skills to become a worthy protector of Raymond and Maria. Raymond says he doesn't want Chris to be his shield. Chris asks if Raymond wants him to be his sword. Raymond says he doesn't want a sword or a shield. That would only put Chris in danger. He screams that he'd rather die alone than drag Chris along with him. Raymond says that he doesn't want Chris to die for him, but he wants Chris to live for him. Raymond makes a condition to Chris that only under this condition can he become his sword. Chris says that they have an agreement. However, since Raymond called him a sword, isn't it obvious that he should always be there? Raymond is outraged. He says that if he gets stuck and doesn't know what to do next, then Chris will become his sword and show him the way. And only then will they be ready to give their lives together. Chris says that it is necessary. Raymond says that if Chris sacrifices his life for no reason, he will hate him, so no amateur performance. Maria watched them and realized that she was completely useless. Unlike Mr. Chris, she could not become a shield or a sword. She would not be of any use to him. Raymond turns to the girl and then takes her hands. He says that the girl is like a mother to him, like an older sister and like a teacher, so if in the future he finds himself in a difficult situation. The girl should not think that she cannot do anything. Everything he has now is thanks to Maria. When he was just born, the first hands that took the hero were Maria's. She was the one who told her everything about the world. She was with him in a room in which there was absolutely nothing. She led him out of the stillies that were pressing on him, as well as Master Chris, Jean, and John, and the rest of his brothers. All of them are Raymond's dear people. He tells the girl that he became like this only because of her. The girl says that with all her heart she is glad that she was able to raise Raymond. The girl says that she won't be able to protect him like Mr. Chris. She won't be able to become his right hand or cover his back. Maybe when he grows up, he'll have his own place, his own home where he'll return, and he won't need her anymore. However, the girl will protect Mr. Raymond's honor. If he goes astray, he will do everything possible to stop him. If the whole world is against him, she will be the one who will scream the loudest about his innocence. After all, it is her duty as his first teacher. Raymond said that she is the best girl. After some time, John said goodbye to Raymond and Jean. Jean was drinking tea and asked Raymond about John, who had gone to Knott's. Raymond asked if Jean would miss him. Jean replied that he spent all his time with John anyway, so he doubted he would miss him even a little. Raymond said it was cruel and wondered what would happen if Brother John heard it. Jean asked not to take it seriously because he was joking. Jean laughs and says that John was trying to act so cool, especially in front of Raymond. The hero replies that it's the first time he's heard that, but if you think about it, John is really cool, but he seems nice. Then Raymond asks where Brother Jean is going. He says there is no point in hiding it, since Jean is also leaving the palace. Jean smiles and says that nothing can be hidden from Raymond. Raymond asks if he is so predictable. Jean says that he just talks to Ray more often, so obviously he has come to understand him. Then Ray asks where he is going. Jean smiles and says it doesn't matter to him where he goes. Jean says Ray was going to leave the family because he had the same idea. Raymond says he'll go to the academy though. Jean says that Ray is always so quick-witted, so he will wait until he comes out into the world, and then they will see. Ray says that by then he will already be 17. Jean says that he does not have that much time. Ray thinks that Jean is not a fool. He understands that he is essentially hiding behind his younger brother. He also has a vague understanding of how his presence affects his future. Raymond asks what Jean will do about the color of his eyes, since the green color of the royal family's eyes stands out. Jean says he will become a blind artist. Raymond says there is no need to become one. Raymond said that Jean can't leave the palace and keep his eyes closed forever. Jean said that he knows, so even with his eyes closed, he can see everything around him with magic. Ray said that sounds cool, and Jean thanked him. Jam asked Ray that he wanted to enter the Knight's faculty. The academy also gathers a group of students. The academy has a group system. A group is formed from 5 students. Together they try to apply the knowledge they have gained in practice. Jean says that he is completely incapable of fighting. If he decides to go on a journey, he will request an escort from the academy, so if Raymond forms his own group, he can take on the escort. Raymond says he'll do it without any problem, but then he asks why him. Jean says that if Ray accompanies him, they'll go to John's and Knott's. He asks if Ray wants to see John surprised. Raymond is surprised and says he agrees. A few days later, Maria showed up with a bunch of letters, which were invitations to tea parties. Raymond thought that all the factions were even more interested in him. After his meeting with General Boltzar, the aristocrats seemed to have gone crazy. Everyone was trying to contact him. He said that adults were so much trouble, and then he tore up the letters. Maria announces that Mr. Chris has arrived. Chris enters the room and says that lately, many people have been walking along the eastern corridor. He asks him to be careful and not to stay alone in his room. Raymond said that everything was fine. He asked if Chris had a mission. Chris gave a positive answer and said that it seemed that there was someone in the army who wanted to keep him away from Raymond's room. He would return as soon as the mission was completed. Raymond sadly tells him to be careful and not to let himself get hurt. Chris gets angry and says that he will not let his master be alone for long with those who are trying to use him for their own purposes. He angrily asks His Highness to rely on him. Ray gets scared and then is left alone and goes to the window. He turns to Maria and asks if maybe he was wrong. Chris has become his sword, he has become his protector, so he wonders if he should have said all that back then. He just wanted a normal life with his family, because all this politics and power struggle is very tiring, and he doesn't want it. He asks Maria if he can handle all this. Maria says that she does not understand all these complicated things, but she is glad that Raymond decided to share his experiences with her. If he had not told her this, she would probably have cried from her helplessness when he needed help. Neither she nor Mr. Chris understood the horrors of the power struggle. Raymond says that if it had been someone else in his place, he would have come up with a better plan. The girl says that it is possible, but nothing comes to mind. She understands how Chris feels now. He is very angry, as is she, that they did not suspect anything, and Raymond had to make this decision alone. Mr. Chris now understands what a heavy burden Ray has taken on himself. All he can do is blame himself and feel sorry, so she asks the gentleman to wait a little. They need time to get rid of the habit of blaming themselves. Raymond thinks that maybe he also needs time to finally sort out his emotions. The young man thanks Maria. Then a young man bursts into the room, screaming for forgiveness. He says he is here to guard His Highness Raymond in place of Mr. Chris. The young man's name is Kojimo Bosa. Raymond doesn't understand what the boy means. Kojimo says that he will take over Chris's duties while he is away. He says that he is glad to meet him, but suddenly Maria appears between him and Raymond. Kojimo asks the girl if he remembers correctly that her name is Maria. He says that he is looking forward to their work together. Maria says that Kojimo is the son of Count Boss. Maria says that although he does not serve her Grimaldi family, she will not allow a cavalier attitude. The girl introduces herself as the Duke's daughter. Kojimo smirks and asks to forgive his rudeness. The young man kneels down and kisses the back of the girl's hand. He calls Maria mistress. The girl is dumbfounded in shock. Kojimo asks if he can speak to His Highness. Maria says that the boy does not think that he will allow him to communicate with Prince Raymond without knowing the minimum of politeness. She asks the boy to leave immediately. Kojima apologizes. He says he was just very nervous, as this is his first time guarding a royal person, but from now on he will treat them with extreme politeness, so Maria should allow him to introduce himself to His Highness. Raymond turns to Maria and tells her to contact General Baltzar right away. He must be the one in charge of changing his guards, so they can discuss the matter with him. Maria said that she understood Raymond. He takes the sword in his hands and says that for now he will get rid of this obstacle that is bothering Maria with his own hands. Kojima, in a panic, asks to discuss all this. Raymond says that he is finally out of the way. He suggests that Maria go and inform the general. The man stops Raymond and says that he will leave the room, but if the young man leaves the room, the local nobles will immediately stretch out their hands to him. Chris tells him that the young man must not leave under any circumstances. Maria said that Kojima was rude. Raymond said that he didn't want people like Kojima to touch a girl, much less kiss her hand. Maria didn't want people like that to harass her master. Raymond turns to Maria and asks her to promise that if he is forced to give up or loses, the girl must leave him. If the girl is happy, Ray will be happy too. Maria was very touched. At this time, Leandra was saying goodnight to her father. Her father was also saying goodnight to her. Baltzar closes the door, but a young man next to him says that he has returned. Baltzar asks about His Highness Raymond. The young man says that he is very careful with those around him. Even today, he did not allow even the nobles of the Mayan faction to come close. His Highness is being looked after by a daughter of the Grimaldi family. She must have a great influence on him. There is nothing interesting in the letters. His Highness has no connections with other aristocrats. Baltzar is talking about the Grimaldi family. This family has declared neutrality since Raymond was born. It is no exaggeration to say that victory or defeat in the faction struggle will depend on who they decide to join. Grimaldi's influence from Maria. Centoro and Ost's origin in Waymond. Nyarkos' swordsman power from Chris. Baltzar tries to understand what Prince Raymond is planning. He even suggested that Raymond is planning to get rid of all his brothers and take over the throne. He orders the boy to continue watching Raymond, but very carefully. Baltzar then wanted to address the boy, but said that perhaps it would be better not to address him by his real name. He calls him Rashid Herzan. He talks about the boss's prodigal son and says that he will show what he is capable of. At this time, Maria was standing in front of Raymond's room, but suddenly someone covered her mouth with a handkerchief. The stranger said that he had found his dear Maria. The girl fell unconscious. The story happened shortly before Giancarlo came out into the world. Bertrand was indignant and said that how much more was Andre going to sew. Giancarlo is not his doll, so that's enough. Andre said that his favorite little brother has an important day, so he wants to sew the best outfit. Orlando said that they can't decide on an outfit, and they are scaring Jean, so he suggests that they all live in harmony. Bertrand says that he tolerates Andre only because of Giancarlo. Andre asks him not to bother him, and says that he is already making the final adjustments to the suit. Orlando tells Jean that Bertrand and Andre are so caring, but they still can't agree. Jean asks why they hate each other so much. Orlando says that it is nothing of the sort. When Anna has any problems, he immediately runs to Bertrand, because he always trusts him and has for a long time. Even as a child, Andre constantly came to Bertrand, even for such a trifle as a wounded teddy bear. Bertrand could even fix a teddy bear with his magic. Andre was very happy when his brother helped him. Bertrand wakes up and says that he had a very nostalgic dream. Suddenly, Andre enters the room and, bowing, says that he has a request. He says that he wants to wrap Jean's outfit beautifully, but he cannot do it himself. He asks Bertrand to adjust the size of the gift with his magic. The young man says that he will try this, but in the meantime, Andre can enter the room. After a while, with the help of magic, Bertrand wraps the gift. Andre says that it now looks perfect, and then thanks his brother. Bertrand strokes his head and says that Andre hasn't changed at all. Andre says that maybe he's become weak, but that doesn't mean Bertrand can touch him. Bertrand asks Andre not to shout because it's too late. The next day, Jean tried on his suit and said that it was very beautiful and the size was perfect. He thanks his brother Andre for this gift, thus the outfit was sewn for Jean. Raymond hugged his brother and said that the outfit suited him very well. Jean thanked Raymond. Kojima rushes into the room and wishes good morning to His Highness and Lady Maria. However, he sees the darkness in the room and suddenly gets a little shocked. Kojima feels a strange atmosphere and then realizes that Maria usually wakes Raymond up at this time. He then hears some rustling in the bed. He takes out his sword and then suddenly yanks the blanket off and points his sword at Raymond. He realizes that it is His Highness Raymond. Kojima then sheathes his sword and apologizes, saying that the atmosphere in the room was different and he decided to draw his sword. He asked what had happened and where Mrs. Maria was. Raymond said that Maria had not come. 7 years. Since Raymond was born, Maria always came. She never left him alone. Maria is now at the age to go out with friends or start a family. However, Maria still chose Raymond. She couldn't leave for vacation without warning. Raymond suspects that Maria might have been kidnapped. He turns to Bossy and asks if he will do him a favor. He suggests teaming up to find Maria. Kojima asks Raymond to wait. He asks why he thought Maria was kidnapped. Kojima assumes that she is simply late. The boy grabs Bosa's face. He thinks that Maria dedicated 7 years of her life to him and got into trouble because of him. He must protect her no matter what. He looks menacingly into Kojima's face and says that this is not a request. He is ordering him. Kojima must answer that he will carry out any order his master gives him. He asks if Kojima understood him. He looks at the boy with his cruel and cold eyes, and then asks the boy for an answer. Kojima was seriously scared. He kneels down and repeats Raymond's words. The youth says that since Kojima understood, he will go to General Baltzar right away and tell him about the situation. Let him bring back Master Chris. He thinks it's not necessary to say, but Chris also cares deeply about Maria. You could say that the two of them raised Raymond like real parents. Chris is furious and says that it was because General Baltzar sent him away. He tells him to be prepared to take responsibility. Kojima notices that Raymond is being too strict with him, and perhaps he has noticed that the boy is a spy. Raymond gets dressed and says he's going to find out how long Maria has been missing. Kojima asks where Raymond is in such a hurry. Maria is the daughter of the Grimaldi family. If she gets hurt, the Grimaldi family will take action. Doesn't that guarantee her safety? They shouldn't rush. Raymond says that Kojima doesn't really think the kidnapper would care. Did the knights only encounter honest people? The chance of surviving a kidnapping depends only on how much time has passed. If she was kidnapped to kill, then the chances are minimal. If he is wrong, then they have nothing to lose. However, it is possible that Maria was kidnapped to subdue Raymond. He does not know what happened to her, so it is natural that he is in a hurry. Kojima says he understands, but only asks for Raymond to promise not to leave the room. Mr. Chris will be back to protect him, so he must rely on them. Raymond says he has until the end of the day. If he can't find Maria today, then he'll be the one to take over, so Kojima should keep that in mind. Raymond says he wanted to go to his mother's today, so he needs Kojima to guard him there. Kojima sighs and thinks that he doesn't know if he's ever felt as much pressure during a normal conversation as when he spoke with His Highness Raymond. Kojima thinks Raymond is smart, but what kind of 7-year-old kid calculates the chances of surviving a kidnapping? Raymond asks Kojima how long he'll stand there and tells him to hurry. Kojima apologizes and offers Raymond to take him to Lady Maya's room. Suddenly, the young man notices that Raymond's hand is shaking, so he understands that he is worried. He pretends to be strong, but he is actually afraid. Kojima thought that Raymond was not like a child, but it seems he was wrong. If only he had followed Mr. Gerard, he would have been able to protect him, even after his false identity, Rashid Herzan. Kojima asks if he should take Raymond's hand. The boy says not to overdo it. He can only accompany him today. Kojima is annoyed, but thinks that Raymond is kind of cute. At this time, Maria wakes up in some room. She tries to understand where she is and looks around the room. Then the girl remembers that she was attacked from behind. She is sure that they want to set a trap and lure Prince Raymond here. Eventually, Maria realizes that she has become Raymond's weak point. His Highness will not want to simply abandon him. Even if he gets hurt, the main thing is that she is safe. The girl imagines his words and thinks that he will say it for sure. Therefore, the girl understands that she must escape from here on her own. She leaves the room and tries to look around. She sees a window and thinks she can get out through it. The girl can't reach it. Suddenly, someone comes from behind and asks what the girl is trying to do. He grabs her and throws her on the bed. The girl turns around and sees Mr. Joffrey. The man smiles and says that he and Maria haven't seen each other for a long time. Joffrey Casanelli is the current head of the Casanelli family and a leading nobleman of the Maya faction. The girl asked how he got her here and why he needed her. The man replied that the girl understood this perfectly well. He asks the girl to relax because they have already talked about marriage. Maria says that they have already closed this topic. She asks if the man really still intends to marry her to attract Prince Raymond to his side. She asks if the man really thinks Raymond will join him seriously when he resorts to such tricks. The man replies that of course it is useful, but does the girl not understand? He asks the girl if she doesn't understand what he wants from her. He orders Maria to make him happy. Raymond came into his mother Maya's room. The girl was sitting at the table. She was very happy when her son came to visit her. The girl asked her son to climb onto his mother's lap. Raymond ran to hug his mother. From that day on, the gap between his father and mother disappeared. The girl became simply unusually beautiful. Before, she was more frightening. Maya has become more emotional. The servants who were afraid of her before now smile at her and find her cute. Suddenly, Kojimo attracted attention. The young man was simply puzzled. Prince Raymond was sitting on Lady Maya's lap. An artist urgently needed to be brought here to draw all this. Raymond said that he was 7 years old, so what was strange about it? And anyway, Kojimo should do his job. Ray orders Master Chris to be brought here, as this will be the first step to restoring his reputation in Raymond's eyes. Kojimo mumbles and says that Raymond can't be 7 years old. Maya asked if this was the young man replacing Nairukos. Then Maya asked where Maria was. The boy thinks the girl has disappeared, and he assumes she's been kidnapped. Raymond says the girl has a day off today. Maya asks the maids if they know anything about this. One maid says she never heard of it before, and another suggests that Mary is ill. Raymond thought that one of her close associates might be involved, but it seems they have nothing to do with it. He also says that Maria didn't tell him anything either. He understands that this is the first time, and he hoped that at least her mother's servants would know something. Suddenly, Maya puts her hand on the boy's head and says that she will talk to Abram about this, because maybe he knows something about Maria. Raymond thought that it would be nice if he knew something. Because of Raymond, Maria is in danger, and she probably hates him now. Suddenly, Maya takes her son by the cheeks and says that he really doesn't want to rely on her. Until he opened her eyes, she couldn't even express her feelings. The girl says it's her fault. Raymond's eyes and his hair and the fact that she kept telling him to become the crown prince. Raymond says that even if it wasn't her, someone else would have told him that too. Maya says Raymond is so kind, just like Abram. She will try her best to protect Maria, because she started all this. Raymond tells her not to overdo it, because he wants her mother to be happy too. The girl smiles sweetly and asks her son if he wants to become a king. But Raymond says that he does not want it at all. He says that he does not have the necessary qualities, but his brother Frederick does. Suddenly, Maya asks what the young man wants to become then. Raymond had never thought about it. Each of the brothers was good at something. He, too, would like to try himself in something that no one else can do. Raymond says that it is not final, of course, but he wants to become a traveler. He wants to tell the world. Maria told him about the world outside, so he really wants to see this world. Somewhere in the Middle Lands, like gods living in the mountains, dragons live, and there are knights who can ride these dragons. His heart trembles from such stories. Maya asks if Raymond really wants to see her homeland. Every member of the imperial family in the Ost Empire has a dragon. Maya did not have her own dragon because she was given away in marriage, but every firstborn who inherits the kingdom gets a dragon. The girl says that she will definitely show Raymond everything if they go there. Raymond says that someday he will be able to show Maria everything. Maya smiles. Then Maya suggests leaving the search for Maria to General Baltzar. In the meantime, she suggests the young man talk to his mother. Chris suddenly bursts into the room. Raymond tells Chris that he is back. Chris kneels down and says that he heard that Maria is missing. Raymond says that according to the knight's investigation, she disappeared last night. Chris hugs the prince and says that he is very glad that Ray is safe. He tells him that he will not let him go any step now. He also says that tomorrow he must discuss Maria's disappearance with Mr. Boss. He looks at the other guards and says that he alone is enough to protect His Highness, and everyone else must return to General Baltzar. One of the guards says that Master Baltzar ordered them to accompany Prince Raymond. Chris says that with them it will be more difficult for him to protect His Highness because they only get in the way. His look was simply terrifying. He pokes his claw right into the neck of one of the guards and says that on a hunt, if you relax for even a second, you will end up dead. Chris, with an angry face, says that he still wonders if any of the guards will be able to follow his movements. Chris then smiles sweetly and tells the boys to start looking for Mistress Maria. He will join in later with His Highness, so they should try to gather all the necessary information. Raymond asks if the culprit is someone from the faction. Raymond says that it probably is. He would like to say so, but it doesn't seem like anyone close to his mother knows anything. Her maids are all daughters of aristocrats from the Maya faction. And if something related to him happened, it would be logical that they would be the first to fall under suspicion, because if their parents were up to something, then they would definitely know something. Chris realizes that he is not involved. Raymond asks about Maria's family and asks if there is any aristocrat who can compete with the Grimaldi family. Chris says that if you think about it, the family of Queen Bernini, the military family of the Kingdom of Centoro, the Baltzar family. These two families support Frederick, that is, the Carina faction, the Rover family, and also the Casanelli family, which is the head of the Maya faction. They support Raymond as the crown prince. Raymond thinks that together with the Grimaldi family, which maintains authority, they make up the 5 duchies of Centoro. Casanelli in the east of the country, Grimaldi in the south, Rover in the west, Bernine in the center of the country, and Baltzar in the north. Raymond realizes that one of them kidnapped Maria, Bernini. Rudo knew that Raymond was going to leave the family, so most likely they would not have kidnapped Maria. General Baltzar has now mobilized a large force to search for her, which means he hasn't either. The Grimaldi family has no reason to kidnap their own daughter. This means that the abductors are Rover or Casanelli. The next day, Chris said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, turning to Mr. Boss. He says that it happened that while he was away, Maria was kidnapped. He asks the trembling Kojimo Bosu if he would like to explain how this happened. The young man, in a panic, begs for mercy. Chris pins Kojimo against the wall and threatens that if Maria gets hurt, he will cut his thin throat. Kojimo starts to cry in fear. Raymond calls Chris to him. He says that they better deal with Boss later because it is not time yet. Chris apologizes and picks the boy up and says that he is safer this way. Raymond thought Chris was very cool. Suddenly, the man coughed and said that Raymond and Chris got along so well, but for what purpose did they come to him? Raymond apologizes to General Baltzar and asks about Casanelli or Rover, and also, as the man thinks, which of them could have kidnapped Maria. Baltzar asks why these two families. Raymond says he came to this conclusion by process of elimination. The Grimaldis have no reason to kidnap their own daughter. The Bernini family would have been stopped by brother Frederick. And the general's family, Baltzar, they would never do such a thing. The young man smirks and asks if he is really right. Baltzar asks if the young man really figured it out himself. Raymond asks if Baltzar is really that interested. The man answers in the affirmative. Raymond crosses his legs and tells Baltzar to stop stalling and just tell him who it might be from the two families, and maybe he'll answer that question. Baltzar thought about it and said that of the two, the Casanelli family was the most likely. Raymond asked why. Baltzar says it's because of the current head of the family, Geoffrey Casanelli. This man took advantage of the occasion when Lady Maya entered the Centoro family to displace his predecessor. Belka also said that there are rumors that he is only pretending to support Miss Maja in order not to lose his title. If anyone is capable of such a dirty deed as kidnapping a woman, it is he. Raymond turns to Chris and tells them to hurry now because they must save her. Chris said he obeyed and then ran to the window. Baltzar and Bossa looked at what was happening in shock. Baltzar said that this was the second floor. Raymond ordered Chris to head to Geoffrey Casanelli's estate. Chris jumped out the window. Baltzar shouted at Kojimo to run after them and protect Prince Raymond. After a while, Chris asked the boss if he was okay. The boy was on all fours, trying to catch his breath. Kojimo says that not only did they jump from the second floor, but they also ran forward at a tremendous speed. He asks if Chris and Raymond realize how hard it was to keep up with them. Raymond said that since everything was fine, they should head to Casanelli's house. Bossa asked if he was just being ignored. The Casanelli house is very far away. They should use a carriage or teleportation magic. Bossa is definitely not strong in magic. Chris says that, unfortunately, he is also a complete zero in magic. Raymond thinks that Chris is already incredibly good at fencing. If he also had magic, he would be completely dangerous and invincible. Bossa says Raymond can take a carriage from the royal palace. He asks where they went on foot. Chris says the prince told him to go, so he went, and didn't think about the carriage. Bossa asks to refrain from independent actions. Raymond says that yesterday they could not find Maria all day. Raymond then asks where they are now. Chris says that outside the royal palace, where Raymond usually resides, there is a headquarters building nearby. The headquarters grounds contain military units and training grounds. They are now outside the main gates, just behind the headquarters building. Raymond asks about the military units and says that Chris walked through such security with him in his arms. Chris says to make sure the prince doesn't even notice them. So if Raymond suddenly wanted to leave the palace, he had to tell him, and he would lead him out. Kojima said that if they did that, his job would become much more difficult. Bosa says he will go and get them a horse, so they must not leave here anywhere. He says that they must not dare to move a single step from here. Chris puts the cloak on Raymond and says that he just thought of it. Raymond's black hair and green eyes will mark him as the heir, and that's too much of a contrast. Raymond says he needs to wear armor. Chris says it won't be comfortable for him to hold the prince in his arms, and it won't fit him. Raymond says Chris is incredibly cool. The man thanks him for the compliment. Bosa came up with the horses and said that he sees them having fun here, but they seem to be in a hurry. They began to move out. The Centoro kingdom is located in the heart of the world, and the royal palace is located in the center of the aristocratic district. The commoner district is located around the aristocratic district, and they are now heading to the east of the aristocratic district. Now, in front of Raymond is what he always saw through the window, the world beyond the royal palace. Chris says the mansion is further away, but if they get any closer they might be spotted, so they'll go on foot from here. Bosa says he will look after the horses here. He also says it is stupid to ask, but he really wants to take Maria by force. Raymond nods affirmatively. Chris says that if anything happens, he trusts Kojima as his highness, so he must be ready to flee with him immediately. If it comes to a fight, who knows how it will end. Chris looks on and wonders how they are going to get into the mansion now. Kojima is surprised and says that they still haven't thought of a plan. Chris says that, to be honest, he thought they would just walk in, and that's it. Bosa said they were going to see Miss Maria's potential kidnapper and they hadn't even come up with a plan yet. Raymond told the man not to worry. They're not completely stupid, after all. Maria was kidnapped to lure Raymond in, so it's unlikely that she'll be killed, and most likely just held hostage. But if they wanted to harm Maria, he would immediately surrender to them and submit, no matter how humiliating it was. That way, they would confirm that Maria was in the Casanelli mansion. The rest could be left to General Baltzar, and Raymond will remain in their hands for now, like bait. The young man turns to Chris. The man says that he refuses. Raymond said that he had not said anything yet. The man replied that he could already guess what he wanted to say. He's been watching over him since Raymond was born. The boy says he still has to agree with him, but Chris knows perfectly well that they won't kill Raymond. Raymond says that only he can save Maria, no matter how many guards are there, but Maria must be the priority. As long as Maria is held hostage, his hands are tied. Chris says he understands, but he's not going to give it up. They're all going to walk out of there together, the three of them. He swears he'll protect them all. He asks you to believe in him and stop thinking about how Raymond is going to surrender. After some time, Raymond appears in front of the main gate. The guards did not understand who the child was and whether he was lost. The man questions the young man and asks if he has any business at the Casanelli mansion. The second man says that if he remains silent, they may misunderstand him. The men begin to laugh. Suddenly, someone grabs the second man from behind and starts to choke him. The second man turns around. Raymond approaches him and calls him brother. He looks menacingly with his green eyes and asks not to be distracted at his post. At this moment, Chris immobilizes the man with a blow to the back of the head. Chris and Raymond lay the guards down by the tree. Raymond asks what they should do if it turns out the Casanellis had nothing to do with the kidnapping. Chris laughs and says that then he will have to scold him for what he did here. Then they are about to go to the Casanelli mansion. Raymond knocks on the door. A voice behind the door asks who is there. Raymond asks if Mr. Hoffrey is in the mansion now. The man at the door asks what business they are on. The boy clenches his fist and says he will continue when he is let in. He asks how long he has to stand outside. He says with an angry look that Raymond has come to meet him. Suddenly, the door swings open. The man grabs Raymond by the shoulders and stutters his name. He asks if the young man is really the real Prince Raymond. The hero replies that he is the real Raymond. The man sees beautiful glossy black curls and green eyes, like emeralds. In front of him is indeed Prince Raymond. The man then apologizes. He asks the guests to come inside and says he will take him to Mr. Joffrey. He also says Chris can come in too. The man says that Mr. Hoffrey will definitely find time for Raymond and Chris. Right now, he is probably talking to Mrs. Maria. Raymond understands that Maria is in this mansion after all. He suggests that it may be a trap. The man says that Madame Maria has worked at the palace for 7 years. Mr. Joffrey wanted to talk to him, so they are glad to see him here. The man asks if Raymond knows Mrs. Maria. Raymond thinks it's all strange, then says that he knows her very well. The man smiles and says that if that's the case, they'll probably have a great conversation. Chris says his name is Chris Niarukos and then asks the man's name. He apologizes for his rudeness and then says that his name is Sergno and he is Mr. Hoffrey's right-hand man. Chris says that the man has ash-colored hair. He guesses that the man is from the Ost Empire. The people of the Centoro kingdom all have brightly colored hair, and the man's hair color is rare. Sergno says that he was actually born in Centoro. Because he was born with that hair color, when he was a child, everyone made fun of him, but despite his hair color, Mr. Hoffrey accepted him. Raymond thought that General Baltzar had spoken of Hoffrey as a complete bastard. Perhaps he simply didn't know him well. The man stopped in front of the door and said that Mr. Hoffrey and Mrs. Maria were here. Behind the door was a long staircase leading down. Raymond realized that Maria Joffre was being held in the basement. He was clearly a villain. Chris turns to His Highness and says that he will be able to stumble. He offers to carry the young man. Then they reach the right room and Serno asks to go inside. Raymond thinks that everything will be fine with Maria. At this point, Joffrey was asking about Raymond and when he first used magic. Maria sat and said that Raymond was cute, his soft and feather-light hands or his eyes that sparkled like emeralds when he was happy. Maria says that in a word, Monsieur Raymond is wonderful. Joffrey falls off his chair and starts rolling on the floor and squealing with joy. Joffrey says with tears in his eyes that Prince Raymond is the best. He asks for an artist to be called here to draw Raymond right now. Raymond and Chris were standing in the doorway. Maria said she wanted to go back already. Joffrey didn't understand what the girl was saying. She was with him all this time and there is no one who knows Prince Raymond better than the girl. Until she tells him everything, he will not let her go. The girl said that she wants to go home. Suddenly, the girl noticed Chris and Mr. Raymond. Raymond looks at the young man who is standing next to Maria and asks if this is really Joffrey. Joffrey took over from his predecessor. He's the current head of the Casanelli family, and he kidnapped Maria to lure Raymond into a trap, so Joffrey is a terrible person. At least, that's what Raymond imagined. But what he saw was a nice man who was very embarrassed. She barely managed to say her name, Joffrey Casanelli. Raymond stood up from his chair and came closer to Joffrey. He asked him point blank why he had kidnapped Maria. The man was frightened. Raymond said that he had kidnapped his dear Maria, so he had to answer now. Joffrey cried and said that he would die happy, and then fell off the couch onto the floor. Raymond did not understand what had happened. At this time, Maria braided her hair and dressed herself as a servant. Raymond said that he was sure the girl was fine. He asked if the girl was hurt. Maria answered in the negative. Maria says it turned out that he just wanted to find out everything about Raymond, and that's why he wouldn't let her go back to the palace. Raymond asks Sergno why Joffrey is so interested in him. The man replies that it is because Mr. Joffrey is in love with Raymond's mother, Mrs. Maya. Raymond sternly replied that it was impossible. Sergno said that he was not capable of confessing to her. Mr. Joffrey has no self-confidence at all, so he just wants to do something for the lady. If it's for the sake of the Lord Maya, then the gentleman is ready to give up his power, all his money and everything else that is possible. Raymond called him a religious fanatic. Sergno says that he is loyal to Mr. Joffrey, and Mr. Joffrey is loyal to Mrs. Maya and Raymond. It turns out that the entire Casanelli family and all the servants obey him without question. Every drop of their blood, every hair on their heads belongs to Mistress Maya and, of course, to Raymond. Raymond thinks it looks like some kind of cult, like otaku who are willing to give their lives for their waifu. Raymond approaches Joffrey and orders him to wake up. The man stands up and asks the gentleman what is wrong. Raymond asks if he is in love with his mother. Joffrey answers yes. Raymond is surprised and asks if Joffrey will listen to him. He asks if Joffrey will come as soon as he takes it. If he says to give it, Joffrey will wait obediently. If Ray tells him to bring something, Joffrey will bring it, no matter what the boy asks. He says no arguments and always obey his instructions. And in return for all this, he will make time to meet with him. Raymond sits down and haughtily asks if Joffrey will be his faithful dog. Joffrey says he completely agrees. Joffrey says that if the young man allows himself to be near him, he will go with him even to hell. If the prince wishes for something, he will fulfill any wish, even if it is impossible. Raymond thinks that Joffrey scares him. But now that he thinks about it, he has other allies besides the master and Maria. And an ally who definitely won't betray him, and how many of his people will obey him. Raymond says that he needs Joffrey to help him right now. After a while, Bosa sees everything and says that Chris and Raymond went to save Maria, but why did they bring Mr. Joffrey with them? Raymond says he will tell you everything now. He orders the man to introduce himself. Joffrey says his name is Joffrey Casanelli, and he is Prince Raymond's faithful dog. Raymond says he knew him, and the whole incident was due to lack of training. He won't kidnap her again. Bosa says that this is the first time he has heard this. Raymond replies that he will explain everything later, in the presence of General Baltzar. Raymond thinks he lied about knowing Joffrey. He can use Joffrey in the power struggle between Maya and Karina's factions. Bosa says that the faithful dog kidnapped the master's servant, and in general, Joffrey is an adult, but he is a dog. The man says that he has nothing against it. Bosa asks Maria if she is okay. Maria says that thanks to Prince Raymond, she is fine. Then Bosa answers that the girl is going to marry Mr. Joffrey. Even though Maria is a Grimaldi, her honor will still be tarnished. Whatever happened, the girl spent the night in the Casanelli mansion. In addition, Mr. Joffrey and Mrs. Maria were a potential couple, although they eventually broke up. Maria started to blush. Bosa continues and says that what rumors will start when people find out that Mr. Joffrey kidnapped her in order to get Raymond. The girl feels awkward, but Joffrey approaches Bossy and, with a threatening face, says that the young man is behaving too rudely. He says how happy he would be if he could get Mr. Raymond. He is ready to die just from the thought of it. Raymond says that's enough. That's not what he wanted Joffrey to say. The man apologizes. Raymond turns to Bossy and says that if absolutely necessary, he will personally find a partner for Maria. Bosa says that means Raymond is ready to give up on Maria being happy in her marriage. Those who want to get close to him will be the first to ask Maria to marry him, and other guys won't want all this hassle. Maria becomes very sad and awkward. Then Chris appears between Kojima and Maria. He says that there is nothing to worry about. Bosa asks Chris if this means he will take Mrs. Maria for himself. Chris gives a positive answer. Maria is surprised. Everyone is surprised. Chris turns to the girl and says that when he heard that she had been kidnapped, he couldn't find a place for himself. They were always there, and if he didn't suit her, then until she found a more worthy partner, he would protect her and her honor. But if his Maria is enough, he will not regret. The man sits on his knee and tells the girl that he loves her. Although he is an ordinary commoner, not an aristocrat, he asks if the girl could give him a chance. Maria blushes and tears well up in her eyes. Chris turns to Kojima and says something like that. If the man is making too much noise about it, he'll have to talk to Bosa himself. Anyone who will discuss the girl whom he loves with all his heart, then he will not receive mercy from him. Kojima says that he wasn't going to say anything. He turns to Raymond and asks what he thinks about it and if he's okay with it. Raymond was shaking all over, and then he started crying and screaming with happiness. Kojima asks His Highness to pull himself together. After some time, Chris took Maria with him to ride a horse. The man asked the girl if she was comfortable. Maria replied that everything was fine. Chris says he left the prince with Kojima, so his heart is uneasy. Maria says it's better that way than leaving him with Mr. Joffrey. Meanwhile, Joffrey was riding alongside and said that Prince Raymond had silky skin, and someone like him shouldn't even touch it. Raymond rode behind Kojima and cried. Bosa told His Highness not to forget to breathe. Raymond said he was right. He had to see Chris and Maria's children, but if they were together, he would choke with happiness. After a while, Balza listened to the report and said that it means that Joffrey admits to kidnapping the daughter of the Grimaldi family. The man answers positively, but says that he did not plan anything bad. Baltzar says that Maria is close to Prince Raymond. Does Joffrey mean that he pretended to be a kidnapper and got past the guards? He doesn't quite understand them. Joffrey said that was enough and clapped his hands. He asked if there was nothing more important than discussing this issue. Baltzar tells Joffrey to think about the kingdom and the shame he could bring upon the Grimaldi family. Joffrey says it won't happen again. Prince Raymond told him not to do that to Maria again. Here's the deal. Joffrey was one of the people who wrote Raymond letters, but it seems that the letters that came from Joffrey Maria burned successfully, so they met for the first time. They pretended to have communicated before. Joffrey will pretend that he sent the letters to Raymond anonymously. The boy did not know the sender's name or what he looked like. Joffrey wrote under the pseudonym Pochi. He hid his identity from Raymond because he was afraid that he would not be able to continue the correspondence if his identity was discovered. For the same reason, Raymond did not try to find out about it. Now that he accidentally found out that Joffrey is Pochi, they can communicate face to face. Bosa is hanging around with him now, sent by General Baltzar from the Karina faction, and Rey has been secretly communicating with Joffre from the faction, but not really. This conflict should be enough to distract all the factions from Jean for a while. Baltzar will wonder if this is really true, but looking at Joffre's fanaticism, any doubts will disappear. Baltza says that there is no choice anyway, so he will trust the head of the Casanelli family. As for the further protection of the prince, Kojimo continues to guard His Highness. Chris returns to guarding Maria and Prince Raymond. Baltzar then asks what Mr. Joffre will do next. Joffre asks Raymond what they will do next. Raymond says that Joffre can return to the mansion. The boy tells Baltzar that he will return to the mansion. Baltzar asks why he came at all then. He smiles and says goodbye to Prince Raymond. He says he would like to chat with him a little longer, but he apologizes for disturbing him. When Joffre left the room and the door slammed shut, Balza slammed the table and blew out a sigh. He said that Joffre was really annoying him. He asks who is constantly having to clean up after him. The man then turns to Prince Raymond. She asks why they would ever trust someone like Joffre. Raymond doesn't understand the question, but Baltzar starts screaming that Raymond doesn't understand what's going on. Joffre is the man who displaced his father to take his place to fulfill his desires. He also constantly gets him into trouble. Baltzar says he would rather not be a duke at all than someone like Joffre. Unlike him, he is devoted to his kingdom. They say his predecessor was a man with a tender heart. Joffre inherited nothing from him. Raymond says that from now on he will keep Joffre on a leash, so Baltzar has nothing to worry about. Baltzar says he should be glad that such a burden was placed on the child's shoulders, or glad that his burden was lessened. Raymond did not understand what Joffre had done to Baltzar. The man then says there is something else he wanted to discuss. He asks if Raymond will answer his question. Ray remembers that he made a promise to Baltzar. He asks about the man's question. Baltzar begins to speak, and the boy's heart begins to beat faster. Suddenly, Baltzar asks Raymond what he thinks of his beloved daughter Leandra. He asks him to understand, and says that he is just genuinely curious. Would Ray mind if Leandra became his bride? Raymond says he wants a love match, so he hasn't considered Leandra as a bride yet. Baltzar says he wants to get to know his daughter better. Raymond says Baltzar is pressuring him. The man says it is natural for a father to try to help his daughter in love. He remembers how his daughter would run to him and say that she wanted to go to the palace to see Prince Raymond, and how she tried to take up different hobbies to become worthy of Prince Raymond. She also started practicing fencing to become stronger and protect Prince Raymond. She asks the men if Raymond would like to at least meet her. The young man says that Baltzar must understand him correctly. He is weak, so he will not be able to protect Leandra if something happens. He does not want to take responsibility for her life, so he cannot meet her. Baltzar asks that if something happens, he will definitely be there to protect his daughter and Prince Raymond. The young man thinks that maybe it all sounds so simple to him, but what kind of situation will he be in then? Ray says how will he feel if he can't do anything? Baltzar sighed and called Raymond stubborn. The boy said that he was rather strong-willed, and then smiled. Baltzar then turned to Raymond seriously and asked him to tell him honestly if he really had support. He just wasn't sure if the young man had really been in contact with people from the Mayan faction, including Joffre. Raymond wondered if Baltzar was really that worried about him, or if he just wanted to take advantage of his doubts. Then he had to make sure that Baltzar was not his enemy. The young man replies that he has support, but he won't say that he is supported, because they are not that close to each other yet. Baltzar wants to add his word, but Raymond flatly says that their conversation is over. He bows and says that he will go to his room because Baltzar has a lot of work because of the young man, so Ray relies on the man. Kojimo happily wants to say that he will take the boy to his room, but suddenly Raymond's index finger appears right in front of him. The protagonist bluntly tells Bossy to stop. Baltzar and Kojimo did not understand what was happening and why the young man stopped him. Raymond puffs out his cheeks and pushes Maria and Chris and tells Kojima that he does not need an escort who is rude to him and Maria. He tells Baltzar that if he sends Kojima to him again, he will have to teach him some manners first. Raymond thinks that he hasn't forgiven Kojimo or anything like that yet. He's not going to remain silent when someone dear to him, that is, Maria, is hurt. He makes a childish face and thinks that until Bosa apologizes, they won't meet with him. Then the door slams shut. Bosa smiles. Baltzar asks him what he did. The boy replies that he thought that if he angered His Highness, he would spill the beans about Joffre, so he decided to start insulting Maria. Baltzar sighed and said that the fact that Bosa was constantly rude to everyone except Baltzar himself made the man feel special, but this time the boy made a mistake. Bosa sighs sadly and asks for forgiveness from Mr. Baltzar. The man replies that wouldn't it be better for him to save his apologies for Prince Raymond. Bosa smiles and salutes, saying that everything is correct and he will do his best to be useful to Baltzar. The man asks the young man to be a little serious because his opponents are real aristocrats after all. The young man replies that as Master Gerard orders, he kneels and says that Baltzar saved his life, so he is willing to do anything for him. He asks to use him as Baltzar pleases. Baltzar asked Bolsa to stop his sweet talk, since he had already told him everything. Kojimo laughed and agreed. Baltzar covers his ears with his hands and thinks that either Hoffrey or Hertzen are always playing the fool, and why he is always surrounded by lunatics. He wants at least one normal servant. After some time, Maria, Chris, Raymond, and Jean were getting ready to have tea. Raymond asked Chris and Maria to sit down and have tea with them. Maria and Chris sat awkwardly next to each other. A slight blush appeared on Maria's cheeks. Jean noticed this and wondered about their behavior. Suddenly, it dawned on him, and he shouted that it was really Niarukos and Maria. Before he could finish speaking, he began congratulating the two. He folded his hands together and said that he always thought how wonderful it would be if they got married. Chris thanked Jean for the congratulations, but said he had not yet received an answer. Maria said she was going to tell him as soon as they had decided everything. She said sheepishly that she had told her father what Mr. Chris had told her. Raymond and Jean thought that Maria seemed to have given her consent. Chris was surprised and asked the girl if this meant anything important. Raymond jumped up abruptly and said that they would go into the next room and that they should use this room together. Jean supported his younger brother. Jean, with shining eyes, told Chris and Maria not to hurry. Chris turns to Maria and tells her to continue the conversation. Maria turns to the man in a panic. Chris told the girl seriously that if she had a place in her heart for him, he would be incredibly happy. Maria giggled and smiled sweetly in response. The girl took Chris by the hand and told the man not to even doubt it. Chris said that in that case he would go and talk to Duke Grimaldi, and with the blessing of Father Maria, they would continue the conversation. Jean and Raymond stood outside the door and listened to their conversation. Raymond smiled. Then Chris said that he wanted to talk about their future together. Just a lot of days, or rather months. A little girl with black hair ran along the corridor of the castle. She barely reaches the door handle and then enters the room where the boy was standing. The girl waves and greets her brother Raymond. Raymond was already 12 years old. Now the story moves back to the time when Prince Raymond was born. Maya tearfully told her newborn son that he would be the next ruler of this country. The cup fell out of Maria's hands and broke. The girl was shocked and did not understand what Mrs. Maya was saying. A few months before Prince Raymond was born, Maria's father told her that she would be Maya's new maid. The girl said that she understood everything. Princess of the Ost Empire, Maya. It's as if she doesn't understand the situation she's in. Her mood is terribly changeable, and there are also a bunch of rumors that the maids can't stand it and are quitting. Maria stood in front of the door and prepared to knock. She felt afraid, but it was all for her family. The girl said that she was entering the room. Maya shouted that Maria was late and asked how long she could have been kept waiting. The girl apologized for her mistake. Maya said it didn't matter. She clapped next to her and told the girl to stop standing there and come into the room and sit down next to her because Maya wanted to talk to her. Maria was surprised that Maya offered to sit next to her. Then Maya grabbed Maria's hands and asked her to tell her about herself. Maria realized that Maya was friendlier than she imagined, or more precisely, more energetic. Maya started asking if Maria had a fiancé, but the girl answered negatively. Then Maya said that before, it means there was a fiancé. She asked what kind of person he was. The girl answered if Maya was married to His Majesty. Maya froze. Maya turned away and told Maria to forget about him, and then told her to get up. Maria was surprised. Abram and Maya's marriage was one of convenience, and when your husband is a man who hasn't visited you for over a year, something terrible will happen in your heart. Maria stood up and said that her potential groom was Mr. Hoffrey S.A. Maya was surprised. Maria went on to say that they had been matched since they were children, but she had found Joffrey very boring. So their potential wedding had fizzled out, and she must say she was glad about it. Maya asked if she loved him. Maria replied that she never thought about such things, because all she had in her head was that she should marry for the sake of her family. He must like her enough to want to be with her. Maya touches her belly and says that she is very curious that maybe someday Abram will like her too. A few months later, Raymond, Maya's son, was born. The girl said that his eyes were green, like his father, and his hair was dark, like hers. Maria thought the birth went well, but she wondered why the girl was crying. Suddenly, Maria heard Maya say that her son would be the next king of the Centoro kingdom. Maya dropped the water jug and apologized, saying she would clean it up. Everyone nearby was whispering about Maya's words. They did not understand which king she was talking about, because Raymond is only the seventh prince, and this is impossible. Maria realized that she had to protect Prince Raymond from the aristocrats' unnecessary attention. Because of Madame Maya's character, she would not be able to raise the child. She doesn't understand why she has to sacrifice herself for her family. She begged for someone to replace her. Suddenly, Chris turned to the girl and asked if she was okay. The man also said that during childbirth there is a lot of blood, and not everyone can stand the sight and smell of it. He offered to take the girl to a place where she could rest. After a while, Chris asked her if he needed to get her something to drink, but Maria turned out to be. Chris asked if the girl had cried because of Prince Raymond. He said that, judging by everything, Maria was still inexperienced, but if she was afraid, he could support her. It just so happened that he had also been chosen as the personal defender of Mrs. Maya's child. If Maria was uneasy alone, then together they would somehow cope. The girl said her name was Maria Grimaldi, and the man introduced himself as Chris Niarukos, but Mrs. Maria can just call him Chris. After a while, Maria held Raymond in her arms in a panic and said that he had a fever again, and Chris said that he would call a doctor and that the girl should calm down. Many even whispered that the child belonged to the shameless Maria, but Chris told the girl not to pay attention to it. Raymond had already begun to make sounds, and Chris thought that at this rate, His Highness would soon say his first word. Maria said that she thought so too. Lately, she has seriously fallen in love with Prince Raymond. Although he is not her son for some reason, when she sees him smile, she is calmed by it. Chris said that he understood the girl. He did not understand a single word of what Raymond was trying to say, but his touch and his smile made his heart flutter. Maria felt something from his words. Maria told Raymond that, when he grows up, he'll be able to go to various events and take girls by the hand. Who knows, maybe one of them will become his bride. If he grows up a little more, he will be able to learn to dance. Raymond asked Maria if she also went to the events. The girl said that it was more important for her to spend time with the prince. The girl says that she has told enough stories for today. Raymond grabs the girl by the hem of her skirt and asks her to tell him more. Then he apologizes. Maria understands that Raymond's look shows that he is trying to hide it, but he needs love, just like any other child. She made a decision that she would become a mother to Raymond, and Mr. Chris would be next to her. Chris stood behind her and did not understand what was happening. Maria shuddered. Chris asked if the girl had a fever because she had turned red. He asked her not to worry because everything was fine. Suddenly, Maria's legs gave way, and she fell right on Chris. The man was scared. After a while, the girl woke up in bed, and Chris was sitting next to her. The man said that according to the doctor, the girl had caught a cold. Maria said that she was very sorry. Chris said that when the girl fell in front of him, he was very scared for her, so he asked her and said that there was no need to make her worry anymore. Chris leaves the room because it is time for him to return to his post. The girl clutched the pillow and said that she did not expect this at all. Chris was remembering Maria's face at this time. He thought that although it was completely wrong, he even liked it. A few years later, Maya said that Maria was a real beauty. Maria thanked the girl with all her heart for taking on the makeup. Maya says there is no need to thank her because it is such an important day for her beloved maid. Maya is about to leave and says that she also needs to get ready. Marie never guessed that becoming a servant to Mistress Maya would be her true happiness. If she marries, she will probably see Prince Raymond less often, but she is sure that he is the happiest for her. It was he who showed her this path, so she has no reason to let go. Nothing and no one should stop him on the way to her own happiness. The girl sits in a wedding dress and says that her happiness is so close and no one will lead her astray. Chris enters the room and asks the girl if she is ready. Maria turns around and says she is ready. The lovers are ready to move towards a bright future. The protagonist was reborn in a world where there are 5 large countries and 19 small ones. He finally arrived at the largest academy in this world. He looked at his brother Bertrand and asked what was wrong with him. Bertrand replies that it's nothing, he just can't get used to his new hair color. Raymond adjusts his glasses and says that if he looks like this, no one will guess that he is from the royal family. Bertrand says dejectedly that he will be in the academic city, and if there are problems, Raymond should come to him immediately. The young man said that there was no need to worry because everything was fine and he was no longer a child. He said goodbye to the teacher Bertrand and said that he relied on him. From this day on, Raymond's new academic life at the academy begins. A year ago, Raymond was hugging two cute little babies and saying that they had grown a lot. He then turns to Maria and Chris and says that they recently had a third child, a girl named Aurora. Maria says that's correct. Raymond turned 12. After that incident, Maria and Chris got married and immediately had children. In order to raise the child, Maria had to leave her position as a servant. The new servant, named Irina Prochenko, came from a family of counts from the north of the kingdom. She became Raymond's maid to find herself a husband. He doesn't even want to understand why they decided that by becoming his maid, they would be able to find a husband. Maria and Chris's two older children were named Zenon and Nestor. Raymond asked how they were doing. Zenon replied that he was doing great, and Nestor replied that he had read all the books Raymond had given him last year. Then Raymond heard a knock on the door. In an instant, his younger sister, Elle, runs into the room. Raymond considers Elle to be the best sister and the sweetest sister. Maria said that they had not seen Mrs. Elfrida for a long time and that the girl had become even nicer. The girl smirks and says that Maria has also become even more beautiful. Chris said that Mrs. Elfrida studies hard every day. He sees her every day and notices her efforts. Elle says that she works hard every day to grow up to be a worthy lady. Raymond thinks that the girl is very beautiful, and her character strongly resembles his mother's. A young man jumps out from behind Elle, Zeno, and Nestor to scare them. He hugs them and tells them they are all so cute. Maria asks if His Highness is really making his social debut this year. Raymond answers in the affirmative and says that Brother Jean is already burning with impatience. For some reason, Jean tried to capture Raymond's image in a painting. His brother Andre sewed a bunch of outfits for him, and Raymond's father had already been buzzing everyone's ears about his son going out into society. Maria said that Mrs. Leandra from the Baltzar family will also be at this social debut. Raymond remembers that he was asked to get engaged to her. Raymond says that he knows, but he hasn't thought about marriage yet because he doesn't want to ruin the girl's life by getting married. Maria said that she, of course, knows that the young man always thinks about others first, but she is sure that after talking to her, the young man will think about his answer. Raymond says that if the girl still likes him, then maybe he will really think about what to say to her. Chris says that if anything happens, he will be able to protect him and Raymond's bride. For this, he is ready to give his body, soul, and his weapon, because Chris is Prince Raymond's sword and shield. Chris says he wants to protect everything he holds dear, and he asks Raymond to make sure he can do it. Raymond thinks Chris is really cool. At this time, a girl with magnificent blonde curls was engaged in fencing and even cut up a wooden dummy. The girl's hands were all calloused. Baltzar approached the girl and said that that was enough training for today. This girl was Leandra. Her father said that she needed to prepare for her social debut. After some time, the man was riding in a carriage and said that he was the son of Abram and Maya, and he was looking forward to meeting his nephew. The man said that Maya, of course, told him about her son from letters, but this would be their first meeting. He will definitely invite him to the Ost Empire. Suddenly, the man looks at his son and says that he is his cousin, but does he really not want to see him? The boy's name was Wilhelm. He was very handsome. His eyes were narrow and his hair was as black as pitch. There was a small mole under his lower lip. Later in the evening, Irina told the prince that everything was ready and the prince looked just fine. The young man thanked his maid. Raymond realized that his outfit was too fancy and had too many details. It was very uncomfortable to dance and walk in this costume. When all this was over, he would finally be able to enter the academy. Suddenly, Jean calls out to Raymond. The young man congratulates his brother on his 12th birthday. He approaches him and gives him his gift, a purple antaros. The young man attaches the flower to Raymond's ear. Jean says that antaros can mean different things, depending on the color. If the young man remembers, then its red color means that the one who gave this flower will always love the one to whom it was given. The same color that Jean gave Raymond signifies perfect beauty. Jean says that Raymond looks just perfect today. John asked them to stop already. As they grew up, Jean and John became real beauties. The elven blood clearly had a positive effect on them, and they are also very tall. Raymond realized that even in these clothes he was no match for them. John asked Jean to listen and told him to stop torturing Raymond. Jean grabbed John in a panic and started saying that his little brother was having a social debut. John asked his brother to stop. Jean said that he couldn't help but be on edge. John asks Raymond to forgive Jean. Ray said that there is nothing to apologize for. He is glad to see John's brother. The young man asked if John had returned from the Kingdom of Nost. John wishes Raymond a happy birthday and says that he brought him a present. He also says that he is not sure that Raymond will like it. Jean said he had been wondering what John was doing all along, but it turned out he was making a gift for Raymond. Ray asked if John had really done it all himself. John said he did it himself, but Jean came up with the design, simply because he himself is not very good at coming up with a script. John asks Jean to activate the decoration. Jean casts a spell, and the decoration attaches to Raymond's ear. Raymond says that John and Jean's gift is beautiful and he will treasure it. Jean says that if Ray wants to take it off, he just needs to touch it and say a spell. Ray thanks the brothers. John said that it seemed to be time to go. Jean said that if they did not hurry, their father would not wait and would come for him himself. John confirmed his brother's words and asked if Raymond was ready to go out. Ray answered positively. Finally, the brothers come out to everyone. The girls were delighted with the beauty of Prince Raymond. They immediately surrounded him and asked him to dance with the girls. They began to argue about who would be first. Raymond realized that it was hard to be popular. Suddenly, a girl appeared behind him, and she said that everyone else was only causing trouble for His Highness. She says that if the girls are going to argue among themselves, they better go and find another place. The girl was simply beautiful, and Raymond recognized her as Leandra. Raymond was surprised at how much Leandra had changed. The girl said she was glad to meet His Highness Prince Raymond. She said her name was Leandra Boltzar. She asked if he remembered her. Raymond smiles and says that, of course, he remembers the girl. Leandra smiles and is very happy. The other girls recognized her as Leandra from the Boltzar family. The girl said that the other girls must have been really annoying. Raymond asked if the girl was really going to apologize for them. The girl said no. As the Duke's daughter, she must be a worthy role model, and it is her responsibility to prevent them from causing problems for the prince. Raymond understands that the girl is nervous, but she is still as sweet as ever. Suddenly, he notices her flushed face, and then sits down on one knee and asks her that they have finally met and would she like to dance with him. Leandra happily agrees. Raymond and Leandra begin to dance in a delightful circle. He smiled, and Leandra felt her heartbeat. The young man then asks if Leandra is going to enroll in the academy. The girl nervously answers that she was going to do so. He says that he doesn't really like such noisy parties, but they will meet again at the academy, and says that it will be much more fun with her there. The girl is very embarrassed by these words and his smile. Raymond bows and says it's time for him to go. The girl puts her palms to her face and says it's just not fair to have such a smile. Raymond says he should have danced at least once, but luckily he managed. He is very glad he danced with his friend. Suddenly, someone says that he thought Raymond was still a child. This young man turns out to be Andre. He also says that the outfit suits the young man very well, and that he was not mistaken with the design after all. Raymond asks how Andre could possibly be wrong. Andre says that Raymond says such wonderful things. Andre then notices Raymond's earring and asks about it. He also notices the pearl inside and says it is a dragon pearl. Raymond says that Jean and John gave it to him. Andre says that this decoration suits him very well, and the pearl of dragons in the language of flowers means you are my light. For Jean, who suffered from poor health all his life, and for John, who could not wield magic at all, Raymond has become a true saving light. He says that Ray loves him just as much, and then kisses Raymond on the forehead. Raymond thinks that if Andre were a girl, they would be misunderstood. If you think about it, all his brothers are kind and extremely handsome. If they worked at a host club, they would all quickly become the best in Japan. Andre says that there is no need for this because he will choose his own partner. Andre says that girls are a real treasure trove of information, especially since he likes being the center of attention of cute girls. He tells Raymond to consider spending time with girls his hobby. He turns around and says he has to go. The girls are already gathered, waiting for Mr. Andre. Then someone grabs Raymond by the shoulder. It turns out to be Orlando's brother. He asks his brother why he had to scare him like that. Orlando apologizes. Suddenly, a girl comes up to them and tells Orlando that next to him is his little brother, about whom he talked so much. He says that the girl is right and then invites Raymond to meet his fiancée, Francisca. The girl introduces herself as Francisca, Acadence. Raymond kisses the back of her hand and says he is very pleased to meet Madame Francisca. He also introduces himself as Orlando's younger brother, Raymond. The girl giggles and says that Raymond is very cute. The boy asks if they are going to his father's now. Orlando answers in the affirmative. Fran asks what happened to Orlando's face and if he is not relaxing too much at such a party. Orlando giggles and apologizes. He says he adores Fran and is so happy to finally introduce her to his family. Fran swallowed with a serious face. The girl said that Orlando had such a cute face just now. She asked to see it again. Orlando said that he was very shy. Raymond watches them and thinks that what is happening reminds him of an Otomi. Only Orlando is a shy girl and Fran is a confident guy. He congratulates them both. Orlando then gets distracted and says that he thought he said he wanted to travel in the future. Orlando says that if he marries Fran, he will become the king of the kingdom of Okadensiasi. Fran will still be the boss, but he will also help a little, so when Ray enters the academy, he must definitely come to them. He also says that the two of them will wait for him. Raymond says that if they don't interfere with him, he will definitely come to his brother Orlando and sister Francisca. Fran says Orlando's little brother is really cute. Orlando says he said that. Ray asks not to look at him like that. Raymond walked on, wiping his face from the shame he felt. Suddenly, a man grabbed the boy. It was Abram, Raymond's father. The man asked the boy how he liked the party. The man smiles and says that Raymond has become noticeably heavier. Raymond was still small when Abram last picked him up like that. Abram asks if Maya is doing well lately. Raymond thinks that she is now taking care of her sister Elle, and there are always a lot of people around her. They have been communicating less lately. Raymond may be a little lonely, but he is glad to see his mother so happy. The man turns to his son and tells him to believe that although he and his mother communicate less often, she loves the young man madly. He also loves Raymond, Maya, and Elfriede. He says that he wants his whole family to be happy. Then Abram asks why his son is so red. Everyone around has realized that His Majesty is getting along well with the prince, and they look like a happy family. Ray wonders if the whole family really wants to embarrass him today. Abram started trying to kiss his son. Raymond looked at his brothers and realized that they had all been through this. He understands that he too must go through all this, but nevertheless he comes up with a plan to go on the attack. The young man hugs his father. He says that he is very happy because Abram, and all the brothers love Raymond, and Raymond loves his father and thanks him for everything. The man starts crying with happiness and starts spinning around with his son. He says that his son is an angel who came down from heaven. Suddenly, a man calls out to them. He says that he understands that Ray is very nice, but Abram should not bully his nephew. Abram says the man's name, Oswald Kaiser. He also says that he thought the man would not come. Oswald apologized to Abram and said that there had been a lot of monsters in the mountains lately, so they were a little late. Raymond realized that the man next to his father was Oswald Ost, his uncle. Oswald is the current emperor of the Ost Empire, and he is also the brother of Maya, Raymond's mother. The man said that he was told that his nephew is the cutest in this palace, so it turns out that it is him. He wonders if Abram told Raymond about Oswald. Ray says that his mom and dad told him about his uncle. Oswald said that he knows a lot from the letters. He learned that Ray had been doing various studies with Bertrand. Raymond said he wouldn't call it studies. Sure, he had been able to help John and Jean, but he had more likely shared his observations. Oswald pats Raymond on the head and says that he is so small, but already a worthy man. Somehow Ray must use his intelligence for his uncle and his empire. He says that they have business with Raymond's father, so they have to go. Raymond fixes his hair and thinks that his uncle is very friendly. Suddenly, Raymond feels a heavy gaze on him. He turns his head. Suddenly, he turns around and sees Wilhelm standing nearby. The boy grins and looks at the boy menacingly. Then he turns and walks away. Raymond didn't understand what it was. A few days earlier, Raymond and Bertrand were studying together in the study room. The boy asked Raymond if he was sure he wanted to go to the academy this year. The boy replied that he had planned to. Raymond said that after he came out into the world, Karina and Maya's factions would start to show him much more attention. He would like to avoid that. Bertrand asked if the young man would hide his identity. Raymond answered in the affirmative and said that he did not want to be exposed. Centoro is located right in the center of this world. All roads lead to Centoro, so the kingdom became a collection of all the scientific knowledge in the world. That's why the level of education here is first class. Many people go to Centoro Academy. The size of the academy is so huge. The academic campus of Centoro Academy has become a full-fledged city. The students of the academy live and study in the city without parental supervision. He receives a first-class education from his brother Bertrand and does not need to go to the academy, but if you want to be an adventurer, you can't do without an education at the academy. After all, the academy can provide experience in exploring dungeons, ruins, and fighting monsters. And depending on their performance in the group, students can receive recommendations to join guilds. He doesn't want to show off his status at the academy, so he'll have to disguise himself. Raymond turns to Bertrand and says that he will be studying at the academy under a different name, so if he sees his little brother, he should not shout at the entire academy. A few days later, Irina screamed throughout the royal palace that Raymond was not going to take her to the academy with him. Raymond said that he will not take anyone with him to the academy. He already says this, that he is going to the academy to study and not to show off his royal status. Since he is not from a royal family, he does not need servants. Irina asks what the prince will do with food. Raymond replies that the academic city has both restaurants and grocery stores, so there should be no problems with food. The young man replies that he will work and will cope with it. Irina was shocked by the young man's words. Raymond says that he is not going to take anyone with him, so he says goodbye to the girl. Irina, in a panic, tries to say something to the young man, but he does not pay attention to her and leaves. Walking along the corridor of the palace, he is stopped by Maya. The girl asked if her son was really leaving for the academy. Raymond gives a positive answer. Maya started to cry and said that she thought the young man would change his mind. Raymond asked his mother to calm down. He says he will definitely come back and time will fly by. Maya says she was just starting to think that her relationship with Raymond and her relationship with Abram were starting to improve. Raymond understands that Maya does not want to be a bad mother to her son, as before. He says that his home is here and the girl is her family. If he leaves for the academy, he will not love his family less. Raymond says that he will write letters and will come during the long holidays. Maya says that she will wait here for her dear Raymond. Then Ray says goodbye to his mother and goes further down the corridor. He meets Jean. The young man asks if Ray is leaving for the academy with Bertrand today. He also says that he has decided to see his brother off. He says that they played together when Ray was still very young, so he asked Bertrand to give them some more time. Then Jean notices the gift that John gave to the 12-year-old boy. Raymond said that he really liked the earring, and if he had the opportunity, he would wear it, and especially since Jean and John gave it to him. Jean throws himself into Raymond's arms. He says that without him, Jean will be very lonely. When he leaves, they will not be able to see each other just like that, thanks to helping Raymond. Jean was also able to get permission to leave the palace. Raymond tells Jean to be careful. He also tells Jean not to overexert himself. Jean agrees with Raymond and says that if he finds it hard, he should return, and when he is lonely, he will write letters to his younger brother, and he should write to him too. Jean says that Ray was planning to live as a commoner, so he decided not to bring servants with him, so they can't come and visit him either. Ray says that it would be weird if the royal family visited him, but they can disguise themselves. Jean says he understands, and they will disguise themselves. He also says they will come to him with John. Ray says he will wait. Jean wishes her brother a good journey, and then, when Ray left, she began to cry. Raymond came out and saw Brother Bertrand. The young man asked if they had finished. Ray answered in the affirmative. They get into the carriage. Ray says that he will come during the long holidays. Bertrand says that, at the very least, the academy is not a prison, and he can return whenever he wants. Raymond sadly said that now he can only think about studying at the academy. He turns to the window. Bertrand sighs and also begins to look out the window. 13 years have passed since his birth, and he leaves the palace walls for the first time, and they did not warn Joffrey about it. There are 3 classes at the Centoro Academy. General primary education, attended by commoners and low-ranking aristocrats who could not afford teachers in childhood. Secondary education is where people who have completed primary education or passed the exam study here in their chosen specialization. There is a choice of the Knights faculty or the Magic faculty. Each student can choose a faculty, depending on what he wants to become in the future. Senior education. Here, you need to learn the basics of teaching or engage in specialized research. Those who have achieved good results in research or have done well in their department can learn to teach, and then they become something like professors. Raymond will go to the secondary education of the Knights faculty. He has no need to go to the Magic faculty because Bertrand taught him everything he knew about magic, so he will not learn anything there. Bertrand wanted Ray to join his department. Besides, he wouldn't be able to train with Master Chris in the academic city. To keep his fencing skills sharp, he would join the Knights department. Also, many famous adventurers came from the Knights faculty, and Raymond wants to be one of them. Finally, they arrived. Raymond asked Bertrand to wait a bit because they needed to disguise themselves. Ray runs his hands through his hair and it turns a light shade. The young man puts on his glasses and says that it is simply perfect. He made his black hair ashen and hid his green eyes with colored glasses. It was just the perfect disguise, and it was as if he had become a different person. Ray asks Bertrand what's wrong. The boy replies that he just can't get used to his hair color. He thought his black locks and green eyes were beautiful. Raymond said that no one would guess that he was from the royal family because the disguise was so good. Bertrand says he will be in the academic city, and if there is a problem, then Ray should go to Bertrand right away. Ray says there is no need to worry because everything is fine. Ray says he is not a child. Raymond then says goodbye to his brother and says that he relies on his teacher Bertrand. Bertrand smiles and says that Ray is a real genius of magic. He will be glad to see him at his faculty at any time. He calls his brother, Ray Ortnicum. In this academy, and from this day on, his new academic life begins. One of the students of the academy saw Bertrand and asked him who he was. Ray Ortneck. This is the identity he will hide under in the academic city, his pseudonym to blend in with the general mass of students. If you read it backwards, it's Centoro in Italian. It seems obvious, but he doesn't think there's Italian in this world. And the hero's name is similar to Prince Raymond's, because he was born in the same year. That's how the main character thought everything out. If he suddenly did not respond to his last name, it was because he was from their village, and no one there had ever called him by his last name, so Raymond believed that he would not be discovered in this way. Raymond came to the dormitory. He is from a royal family, so he has never lived alone. He has always been surrounded by servants, but here he will have to live like an ordinary person. His room is number 301, but he is somehow even a little nervous. Suddenly, a young man calls out to him. The young man says hello and says that his name is Oliver and he lives in room 302 next door. He asks if the boy is really from the magic department too. Ray extends his hand and says that he is not from the magic department but from the Knights department. Oliver immediately pulls his hand away. Ray asked what was wrong. Oliver said angrily that he was from the Knights department, not economics or engineering. He turned around and snorted, and his face showed an emotion of hostility. Ray didn't understand what had happened and what was wrong with this guy. He realized that he needed to unpack his luggage. There is no specific uniform at the academy. Instead, students wear a badge that identifies which faculty they are from. There are also economics and technical faculties, and a humanities faculty. The humanities department teaches history, literature, and other humanities, and as for medicine, it is a branch of white magic in the magic department. As for geography and natural sciences, which existed in the past world, they do not exist in this world. If they can draw maps, then geography is not needed, and natural sciences are not given importance since magic exists. Maria is an inseparable part of this world. Instead of electricity, they use the light of magical plants and environmentally friendly light. It's somewhat similar to the magical stones that are created in Centoro. They glow due to the compressed magical power that has been accumulating in the earth for many years. You can also use monster cores. This is the main way for an adventurer to earn money. However, the young man found a way to light up a room without using expensive magic stones and monster cores. He placed a dragon pearl plant in his room. If you love and take care of this plant, it will live a long life. Then Ray thought about Oliver and why his friendliness had disappeared when he said he was from the Knight's house. He thought about the Knights faculty and the Magicians faculty competing with each other. It was similar in Raymond's previous world. Schools were also divided into faculties, so conflicts arose because of such prejudices. Perhaps the same thing is happening in the academy. Raymond is not a genius with a blade like Master Chris, but he was taught magic by his brother Bertrand, so to become strong, Raymond decided to combine sword and magic. He wanted to use both. However, if there is tension between the two faculties in the academy, this will be extremely troublesome. He is already worried about the future, although classes will not start until tomorrow. The next morning, Ray comes out of his room and says that he is going, and then he realizes that he lives alone and there is no one to answer him. Suddenly, he notices Oliver. Ray realized that he heard everything. Ray wishes Oliver good morning, but the boy only smirks. Oliver turns and leaves. Raymond wonders what's wrong with this boy. He's really annoying. It irritates him that he treats him like this just because he's from the knight's house. Ray gets worked up from anger, and because he's fed up with everything, he decided that he'd bypass the magic department. He shook his head and told himself to pull himself together. It's about a 25-minute walk from the dorm to the academy, and it would be easier with a bicycle, but there are none in this world. He thinks that maybe he can recreate it in this world. He should try to contact local inventors, and that will be his #1 goal. Raymond walks the streets of the academic city and is surprised. Everything that is needed for the life of students in the academy can be bought here. He recalls how Abram said that he would need money to live independently at the academy, so he handed him a huge bag of money. He thinks that his father gave him a huge bag of money, but he doesn't want to rely on it, so he thinks about finding himself a part-time job. Finally, Ray came to the academy. The young man was met by a girl who called the young man a new student. The young man said that he was from the knight's faculty. The girl replied that today was his first day. The girl asked the boy if he knew anything about this emblem. The boy answered in the negative. The girl said that the boy had arrived at the best academy in the world. The emblem is essentially an identifier. It is also a pass. Those who do not have the emblem will be repelled by a magical barrier. Also, the boy should keep in mind that if the boy tries to go through a door that is not allowed to him, he will be punished, so he should be careful. Ray thought that the girl looked like an NPC in the game. In addition, as long as the young man has the emblem, he can make purchases in the academy stores. Of course, the goods will be at a discount. The girl then shows Raymond a map of the academy. The girl wishes him a successful academic life. Ray thanks her. Then she tells the other boy the same words about how the emblem is an identifier and also a pass. Those who do not have the emblem will be pushed away by a magical barrier. Ray definitely thought it was an NPC. Raymond walks to the academy. He sees students practicing magic. Then he sees the library. Then he enters the knight's faculty auditorium. He is the first to arrive. He sits at the end of the room and thinks that he will stand out less here. He has some time before the lecture, so Ray decides to get the spell book that his brother Bertrand gave him. Bertrand said that the book contained more information than he had taught Raymond at the palace. It was something that was usually taught in the senior years of the Faculty of Magic, but Bertrand was confident that Ray would understand it. Bertrand also said that Ray can also find magic for the dungeons, and it will definitely come in handy. He opens the book to read, but it won't be useful for a real fight. Fire magic can burn everything around, including allies, and streams of water wash everything away. All these spells require a bunch of mages. It's unlikely that all of this can be used in a real fight. And anyway, can't a mage and a knight fight as a team? Suddenly, other students enter the classroom. They were discussing something about magicians. Then, someone says that the young man is reading a book of spells. Some even whispered that perhaps the young man had simply gotten lost and confused the classroom of the knight's faculty with the classroom of the magic faculty. Suddenly, a young man came up to Raymond and then stamped his foot on the table. He said, "Wow, there's a magician in the knight's audience." Raymond realized that he was clearly being approached by a guy who would only cause him trouble. Finally, the long-awaited academic life of the main character, Raymond, began, but it did not start off smoothly. One student laughs at Raymond, and another student from his department pesters him in the classroom. The young man sat and said arrogantly, looking at Raymond, that a magician had sneaked into the knight's audience. Ray realized that he was clearly being pestered by a guy who would only cause him trouble. The young man asked the hero what he was staring at, and if he wanted to get something for it. Raymond exhaled and then smiled sweetly. The boy was surprised. Then Ray asked if the boy couldn't see the emblem on his chest. If he didn't even notice it, then maybe knighthood is not for him, because with such vision and attentiveness he will miss all the monsters. The young man got angry and asked what Ray had said. The hero replied that judging by appearance was simply stupid, and maybe he wanted to personally evaluate his fencing skills. The young man angrily called out, "Was Rei the weakling really challenging him?" The hero asked why the young man was yelling and had bad breath. He should calm down. The boy said that he would kill the main character, and Rei asked the boy to say his name because he had to know the name of the one who would defeat him. The young man grins and says that his name is Arthur Shishikan. He orders Raymond to remember this name well, because it is the name of the one who will humiliate him. Raymond asked Arthur's name again and called him Shichikan, and then used a play on words and called him a tuna, asking if he was a fish. And then he asked if Arthur really thought a fish could beat a man. Suddenly, a man enters the classroom and says that the new students this year are very energetic, but he will not be able to introduce himself if they do not stop making noise. The man asks everyone to take their seats. Raymond sees the man's emblem. Arthur shouted that he would not rest until he beat the boy's face, and Ray apologized to the man and said that he let his emotions out because the guy ran into him screaming. Ray knew that the man had the professor's emblem attached to him, so the best option would be to keep quiet. Arthur was angry that Ray had behaved like that, so he grabbed him by the collar and told him that he was definitely out of his mind and that he would give him a punch. Suddenly, the teacher came up to them and said that he had made it clear that they needed to take their places and stop fighting. Then he thinks that if Arthur is so hot-blooded, he's clearly not going to sit down. He reminds the boys of collective responsibility and names Ray and Arthur in full. He says that both boys can settle their disputes on the training ground. He also said that the others are going there too. This may seem too sudden, but it will help show Ray and Arthur's strengths and also help them understand their weaknesses. The man says that he had planned to get by with a simple acquaintance today, but now everyone will have to suffer because of these two. He says that he is expecting worthy fights. After some time, Ray and Arthur find themselves on the training ground with blades in their hands. The professor gives the command that they can begin. Arthur immediately clutches his sword and rushes at Raymond. He says that with his soft magician's hands, he will never defeat him. Ray blocks Arthur's jump attack, but realizes that the boy is very fast. He's amazed by his reflexes, while Arthur simply smiles. The boy strikes one blow after another, while Ray dodges or blocks the attacks. Arthur asks what is going on and where Ray's passion has gone. The boy thinks it is amazing that he is still holding on at all. Raymond is far from a genius in fencing. The more he trained with Master Chris, the more he realized that he would never reach that level. Now he can fence like a normal person, or slightly stronger than a normal person if he puts in the effort. Genius is 99% effort and only 1% talent. An ordinary person will never get that 1% and will never reach 100%, but Shishikin is an extraordinary person. He clearly has that 1% because the way he moves and the way he wields his sword, he's superior to Ray in all of that. Ray dodges the attack once again. Arthur tells him to stop jumping and dodging because he feels like Ray is making fun of him. Ray said that Arthur was much stronger than him, so he was surprised, but he asks Arthur if he was sure he should have stopped the attack. Arthur didn't understand what Ray was talking about or what he was trying to tell him. Ray asked if Arthur had noticed that he hadn't started fighting yet. He only blocks Arthur's blows, so the boy still hasn't figured out his fighting style. He wonders if Arthur is sure that it was worth giving Ray a break. The boy smiles and says that thanks to Arthur's delay, he now knows how to defeat him. Arthur is furious at Ray's smile. He says he will kill Ray. The people in the stands thought Ray had made something up, but it wouldn't help him anyway. They also thought Arthur might seriously kill him. Arthur makes one attack after another. He smiles and says that Ray can only talk. The hero at this time assesses the situation with a cold look. Suddenly, Ray reached out and touched Arthur's blade. The boy noticed this and jumped back. The boy did not understand what Ray had just done, but he did not care, because it made no difference, because he was confident in his victory. Suddenly, Arthur tries to attack Ray again, but suddenly his hand began to shake. He looked at the sword and realized that it had become heavier. At this time, Ray smiled and asked if Arthur felt that the weight of his weapon had become much heavier. Arthur turned his attention to his sword and wondered about the weight, but at that moment he saw Ray, who jumped up to strike. Arthur didn't know what to do now, because he couldn't use the sword. Ray used a spell that increases the weight of things. To do this, he needed to touch the blade. This spell only lasts for 10 seconds, but that time is more than enough for him to defeat Arthur. He attacks and hits the boy's hand, causing the sword to fall out of his hand. Then Ray raises his hand and a magical seal with lightning appears from it. The young man smiles and says that he has won. He places his hand on Arthur's face to attack him with magic. Arthur had already prepared himself for the worst, and therefore closed his eyes. Suddenly, a small cloud of smoke flew out of Ray's palm. Arthur opened his eyes. Ray said that he already said that he had won. Arthur lost because he couldn't interrupt his spell, and since this was just a training fight, there was no need to land a direct hit. Everyone in the stands was surprised that Ray had won. They couldn't understand why the knight could use magic. Suddenly, a young man said that Ray was a very curious guy. Arthur grabs Ray by the collar and asks if he really is looking down on him. Ray said that it was Arthur who underestimated him. If he had continued to attack him, he wouldn't have had a chance. Suddenly, the professor came up and said that, as he expected, it was a wonderful fight. He turns to Arthur Shishikin and says that this fight will be a good lesson for him. Even if his opponent is weaker than him, he can't relax until the very end, because otherwise everything will end badly. Then he turns to Ray Ortnek and says that he has a rather interesting fighting style. However, the child's physique. Fencing is based on the strength of his body and intuition. He would have definitely lost if Arthur had not decided to make fun of him. Ray understands this. He understands that he has absolutely no talent for fencing, but he is still offended. The man says that Ray is an excellent magician. The activation speed and impressive control, everything is top-notch and well thought out, so he does not understand why the young man decided to choose the knight's faculty and not the mage faculty. Apparently, he decided to become a new kind of knight. Most of the new students are 15 years old, but Ray is only 13, so their physiques are different. Since he can't win with strength, he will use magic, because that's his fighting style. For this reason, he continued to study magic. In addition, there is magic to increase muscle strength and acceleration. However, you can't always rely on him. Magic has its limits. Its effect weakens over time. He can't win alone using only magic. His strength will be revealed in a group fight. He can make things easier for his group by using buffs and debuffs, but there is a problem with group creation. It was clear from his meeting with Oliver yesterday. In this world, mages group with other mages and knights with other knights. No one even thinks about mixed groups. They prefer to fight strong opponents with pure firepower, without any planning, i.e. relying only on force. This is the opposite of what he wants. There is simply no class for those who use both magic and sword. That's why there are few groups in this world that can defeat an S-rank monster. But with teamwork, there would be more strong groups. By the way, Teacher Chris is an S-rank adventurer. He got his rank by defeating an S-rank monster, a dragon. Ray doesn't think he'll ever be able to do that, so he's aiming for a balance between magic and swordsmanship, to create a group with the perfect balance. The mages thought of the knight's faculty as a haven for barbarians with brawn instead of brains, and the knights thought of the mages as nerds who sat in the library all day and smelled of mold. It was hard to work with that kind of relationship. The professor of the knight's faculty said that he was unable to introduce himself due to an unexpected sparring match. He was glad to meet everyone, because from today on he would be watching their path and teaching them the basics of fencing. The man's name is Clovis Muller. All the students were shocked by this information, because that is the name of an A-rank adventurer. He was also called the Dragon Knight Clovis Muller. The man said that he had long since quit his job as an adventurer, but his fame seemed to be going nowhere. Anyway, the students will have to wait here for him for a bit, so they'll finish here for now. Suddenly, Arthur calls out to Ray and asks what kind of magic it was. According to Mr. Clovis Muller, Arthur is better at fencing and intuition. He only lost because of Raymond's magic. Ray said that his words were true because Arthur was better than him in fencing, although, on the contrary, everyone present was better than him in fencing. But Arthur, who thinks so narrowly that all he knows is how to swing a sword, he will not lose to such a one. Before asking questions, he could have tried to think for himself or look for answers himself. He never questioned what Ray had done, how long he had spent on the spell, or what the activation condition was. Of course, Ray could tell Arthur everything, but if he wants Ray to tell Arthur everything, then he needs to get something in return. Arthur asks what Ray wants in return. The boy grabs him by the collar and asks him to teach him fencing. Ray said he would teach him magic, and Arthur would teach him swordsmanship. It would be a fair deal. Ray's lessons with the teacher were just fun. He didn't feel like he was making much progress because Chris was trying not to overexert him. Ray realized that it wasn't enough, and it wasn't enough. Arthur said he understood, but then he said that it definitely wouldn't happen. Ray demanded that Arthur give a reason, because that would only benefit him from learning magic. Ray didn't understand why Arthur was so stubborn. Suddenly, one of the young men pulled Arthur by the collar and ordered him and Ray to calm down. The young man asked the two if they really hadn't let off steam yet. Arthur asked him if he was asking for trouble. The young man smiled and said that his name was Nakiri. Shiro is from the Knights Department. Arthur said he didn't care who the boy was. Shiro asked why Arthur always picked fights with everyone. Ray told Shiro that he was very ashamed of his friend. Shiro told Ray not to worry because he had nothing to apologize for because Shiro had provoked him even more. Arthur asked what Ray was doing. The boy grabbed Arthur's face and told him to be quiet and not to shout. Ray introduced himself to Shiro and said that he doesn't like being called by his last name, so he can just be called Ray. Shiro said that he was glad to meet him. Ray thought it was Nakiri Shiro. Sounds like a Japanese name. Ray asked about how Nakiri is apparently a family name and Shiro is a first name. Shiro was surprised because many people think that Nakiri is a name and they always get it wrong. Nakiri is a family name. He is glad that at least someone understood it right away. Arthur said he had calmed down and asked to be let go. The boy introduced himself as Arthur and said he had no interest in weaklings like Ray. Ray realized that Arthur was deliberately trying to anger him and get into trouble. If Ray was so weak, then how could he defeat Arthur? Shiro asked the guys to listen to him and asked what they were going to do now and what their plans were. Arthur said that it was time for lunch. Shiro said that it was only morning, to which the boy replied that he was hungry after the battle. Shiro asked Ray what he was going to do now. The boy said that he was planning to study magic in the library. Arthur smirked and said that the library was full of weak and feeble mages. Ray said that Arthur had just lost to that weak and feeble mage. Ray and Arthur grabbed each other again, and Shiro said that the guys should stop fighting and be more friendly. Shiro pulled Arthur away and said that he wanted to eat in the dining room, so they were heading straight to the dining room. Ray thinks Shishikin is interesting. His decision-making, reaction, and body control are all top-notch. As much as he hates to admit it, he is the strongest in this class. Another classmate of Ray's, Shiro, is most likely from the south, since he is clearly not from Ost. If he is strong enough to hold off Shishikin, then he is clearly not weaker than him. Didn't he meet too many strong people on the first day? And he's not only losing to them in swordplay, but the magicians from the magic faculty are probably no weaker. He's starting to think that he has no talent. However, unlike them, Ray has his own way. He owns both a sword and magic, so he is sure that he can win anyone. He decides to make them play by his rules. Against the knights they would use magic, and against the mages he would use the sword. He would use their weaknesses against them and thus gain the upper hand. However, to do this, he needs to work hard and study hard. The main library of one of the world's leading academies has the largest collection of books in the world. Ray was in the library. Oliver asked what the stupid knight was doing here. Shouldn't stupid knights swing their stupid swords on the training grounds? Ray asked what was wrong with him reading magic books. Oliver was surprised that Ray was reading a magic book. Oliver asked if Ray really understood it, but the boy replied that if he didn't understand it, he wouldn't read it. The young man asked why Ray had entered the knight's faculty, since they had not even been taught this yet. He did not understand the young man. Ray asked what year Oliver was in. He said that he was in the 3rd year. By the way, he is older, so Ray should speak respectfully. Even though they are in different faculties, he is still older. Ray said that from their acquaintance, he somehow does not want to treat Oliver with respect. Oliver said that this is the book that Ray is currently reading, that they will be studying in the 2nd semester of their 3rd year. They will learn how to deal with monsters with high resistance, such as dragons, creating large magic circles with 10 or more people. Such monsters cannot be defeated alone because a large group is needed. Ray says that mages can't work alone. What a surprise. Oliver says of course they can't. Both the Faculty of Magicians and the Faculty of Knights teach that it is very difficult to fight alone. It is not enough to just read books. Without comrades, you cannot become an adventurer. However, if you fight group on group, the Faculty of Magicians will be stronger. They will never lose to the talentless fools of the Faculty of Knights. Ray saw a lot of faith that a mage wouldn't lose. That's why this Faculty of Mages is the same. Ray says Oliver is wrong. If Oliver is so confident, why shouldn't he use these talentless fools? Oliver was surprised by Ray's words and didn't understand what he meant by using them. Ray said that for a strong spell you need to draw a big magic circle, so monsters can easily interfere. Oliver said that Ray is right. That's why he says that adventurers can't become alone. Not only magicians will tell him that. Mages' strength is their massive magic damage, and their weakness is their light armor and low supply. Ray said that wouldn't it be better if he had someone who would draw attention to himself, a tank. A tank is a class in RPG games that can draw enemies away from other party members. Every party should have a tank, a healer, and someone who will deal damage, DD. Mages can take on the roles of healers and DD. Knights can also be DD, and can also take on the role of a tank, the faculty of magicians and the faculty of knights. If they work together, then creating groups and any orders or tasks will become easier. Oliver understands Ray's words and says that he didn't even think about it. If the mages and knights unite, their usefulness will increase, but at the moment, both houses do not get along at all. But none of them even thought about joining forces with the knights. They thought that stupid people who didn't have magic would only get in the way. Ray realizes that hatred has slipped through again. However, Oliver extends his hand to Ray and says that the boy is not like the rest of them. He says that he is pleased to meet him and his name is Oliver Wood. Ray thinks that if he can get Oliver from the Faculty of Magic to help him progress in his studies of magic, he introduces himself as Ray Ortnek. He says he doesn't like being called by his last name, so he can just call him Ray. Oliver says that the idea of Ray surprised him a lot and he didn't even think about it, and he himself is also very interested in Ray. Ray asked about Oliver's teacher. The young man said that he had more than one. Oliver remembered that the Knights faculty had only one teacher, and he taught them science, history, and the art of combat alone. In the Faculty of Magicians, everything is different. Depending on what magic they have a lesson on, the teachers change. This system is better suited for a more in-depth study of the disciplines. Ray finds an analogy between middle and high school. Oliver asks what he means. Ray says, in general, how would teachers react to this idea of collaboration? Oliver says he's not sure, because different teachers have different opinions. Ray suggests that maybe they should talk to them and ask. Oliver says that the teachers in their department aren't that easy to get. Suddenly, Bertrand passes by. Ray starts shouting and pointing at Bertrand. Oliver is surprised by Ray's behavior. Ray wants to call his brother, but remembers that at the academy he hides the fact that he is a member of the royal family. They cannot communicate like in the palace. If he calls Bertrand his brother, he will definitely reveal himself. Oliver asked in horror why Ray had called the teacher Bertrand. Ray called the teacher. Bertrand said there was so much energy. All the students were so energetic this year. He looks at Oliver and says that he, let's say, remembers him because he was definitely in his class. Then he looks at Ray. The young man says that he is from the Knights faculty and his name is Ray Ortnek. He is a new student and is in his first year. Bertrand says his name is the same as his younger brother. Bertrand asks if Ray wanted to talk to him. Ray says it's not that simple and it will be a long conversation. He opens a map of the academy and suggests they talk elsewhere. After a while, they arrive in a conference room. Bertrand looks around and says it's a bit cramped in here. Ray says maybe his room is just too big. Bertrand asks if the young man really thinks so. Ray realizes that Bertrand's room in the palace is simply enormous, and he is not used to normal sizes. There the room is like a one-room apartment. Oliver is shaking with fear, and says that things are very bad because the teacher Bertrand is from the royal family. He does not understand how one can communicate so freely with a member of the royal family. Ray asks if Oliver is okay. Oliver said that teacher Bertrand is a member of the royal family. Why is Ray so calm? Bertrand then asks why Ray called him here. Ray says he wanted to ask if the teacher wanted to do research together. Oliver just grabbed Raymond's shoulder in shock. Oliver can't stand it and starts yelling at Ray that the teacher is against it because he is the second prince of the Kingdom of Centoro, and he is also a famous researcher. He and Ray are ordinary people, that is, commoners, and the fact that they are talking to royalty is already a miracle. Ray thinks that if Oliver finds out that Ray is from the royal family, Oliver's heart will stop. Ray apologizes and says that he was not allowed to finish. He says that they were talking about joint research in the field of magic development. Bertrand says they don't practice this because there is no need for it. Each discipline and specialty operates independently. Fire means fire and water means water. Theory, practice, hypotheses. Each discipline has its own teacher who understands the discipline best. The only thing that all the specialties of the Faculty of Magic have in common is the theory of magic. Ray says that what specialty each student will develop in depends on whether the teacher can persuade the student to study his specialty. Bertrand answers yes, then adds that this means that magic is not combined at the academy either. Bertrand, with sparkling eyes and a great lover of listening, asks Ray to explain everything to him. Ray asks how the professor thinks the lightning effect can be strengthened. Bertrand asks if it is not enough to simply pour more magic power. Ray says that in this case, the strength of the magic will depend only on the amount of magic power of the magician. Of course, people with high magical power will not see a problem, but mages with low magical power will immediately be labeled as weak. But if you think through a battle plan, you can easily win against strong opponents. Ray says it's not really that hard to make lightning more effective. Ray asks what lightning is and why it happens. That's the secret. Oliver says lightning often hits lightning rods, so you need to use metal. Bertrand says that lightning strikes from clouds, so it is somehow connected with rain, that is, with water. Ray says that lightning often strikes high objects, and that what is wet after rain conducts electricity better. But if they wear precious metals, it doesn't mean that lightning will only strike you. Metals conduct electricity better than the human body, so if lightning strikes, the current will pass through the metal. In simple terms, to hit a monster harder with lightning, you first need to wet it with water magic. Or you can stick a long metal object, like a spear, into your opponent's body to act as a lightning rod, allowing for a more targeted strike. Bertrand says he would never have thought of that. Then he grins and says it's very interesting. He'll talk to every professor and thinks they'll find the idea interesting too. They will most likely agree to conduct joint classes of specialties. The man thanks Ray for an interesting idea. Ray says no thanks, and thanks Bertrand for taking the time to talk. When Bertrand leaves, Oliver collapses and says he was with a member of the royal family and they were talking alone. Ray tells him not to die. After some time, the young man left the academy and thought that he was very tired and it was time to go home. Then he thought about how he should think about a part-time job. He didn't want to rely on money from the royal palace. He wanted to live independently so as not to create unnecessary suspicions. Suddenly, someone called the young man. The man turned out to be Shiro. Ray asked where Shishikin was. Shiro replied that he said he would train, but Shiro wanted to find a job, so he decided to take a walk around the city. Ray suggested that Shiro go with him because he wanted to find a part-time job too. Shiro asked if Ray really wasn't getting any money from home either. Ray said that he wasn't getting any and then asked how far away Shiro's homeland was. Shiro replied that it could be said that way. The village he lived in was in the middle of nowhere, far south of the empire, through a tunnel carved into a mountain, through a forest filled with demons. In their village, if you're weak, you can't even get to the Imperial Academy. Most people spend most of their childhood in the village, and when you grow up, you start a family, and that's it. However, Shiro would like to make it so that the children have more options for developing their own lives. Ray understands that Shiro is thinking about the future of his countrymen. He probably has the most noble goal to study at Centoro Academy. Shiro is an amazing person. The young man, meanwhile, asked Ray why he was here. Surely he had something like that too. Ray says that he is not as amazing as Shiro. He just wanted to leave home to live on his own. Ray thought that Shiro would probably think of him as a child. Shiro says that Ray went to an unknown place where he doesn't know anyone. He has a lot of courage. Shiro says that Ray is very good. The young man apologizes to Shiro in his thoughts, but everything is not as he thinks. Shiro then asks what kind of job Ray is looking for. Ray says he hasn't decided what yet, then asks Shiro. Shiro says one where he can make a ton of money and can handle anything without problems. Ray thinks he has no wishes at all. Besides, there may be problems with hiding his identity. Glasses and long bangs are necessary for disguise. He won't be able to serve customers in this form. Then he notices an antique shop. Shiro asks Ray if he likes the shop. The boy answers positively and says that he will go to that shop. He asks if he will go with him. Shiro replies that he will refrain from proposing because he doesn't understand anything about it anyway. They say goodbye to each other. Raymond looks around the store. He is very interested in it because it was not by chance that he saw it. He decided to look in the window. Suddenly, a woman appears on the other side of the glass. The woman comes out of the store and asks what the young man needs and what he is doing here. She says that, as if a young man like him would understand anything about all this, Ray asks if it is really a woman's shop. He senses some hostility from her. The young man says that he wanted to ask if she needed workers, but the woman gives a negative answer. He then asks if he can at least go into the store. The woman says he can go in, but he has to try to break something. Rei agrees. He looks around the store and says he might pick up some things before heading back. Suddenly, the young man notices some interesting goods. On the display case, there was a high-quality magic stone, and it was sold at the same price as a disposable pen. Suddenly, he notices a beautiful chair and thinks that this furniture is from some mansion, but it is certainly of excellent quality, but the price is 50 times lower than the market price. Suddenly, he notices the jewelry and sees that there is a ring with a precious stone for the price of a child's toy. There is definitely something wrong with the prices in this store, and why is everything so cheap? The young man asks the woman who set the prices. The woman asks why it matters to him. Rei realized that the granny didn't know what was going on with the prices in the store. The young man said that everything in the store was too cheap. The woman is surprised by the young man's words. Rei says that there are only excellent goods here. All the price tags need to be redone immediately. He waves his hands. The young man thought that the woman was about to scream in anger. He apologized and said that he had gotten too carried away, and then scratched the back of his head. Suddenly, the woman began to cry. Rei was very surprised by this. Rei tries to find out why the woman suddenly started crying. The woman apologizes and says that the young man asked if she needed workers. Rei answered that he did because he was looking for a part-time job. The woman says the salary will be small. Running a shop costs a pretty penny. Besides, even with their low prices, there will always be another expert willing to haggle. The woman needs a worker who will work with clients. The young man asks if the woman really wants to hire him. He says that is what he was hoping for. Suddenly, someone comes into the store and says that he has returned home, calling the woman Granny. A girl appears at the door and calls Rei a customer. The woman says that she came just in time. From today, this boy works in this store. The woman asks the young man his name. The hero introduces himself as Rei. She says that this girl is her granddaughter. He must listen to what she tells him. The girl extends her hands and says that her name is Julia. She'll be very happy to work with the young man. The woman intervenes and says that his first job is to redo the prices. Then she slams the door behind her. Rei tells Julia that he was hired unexpectedly. If he doesn't understand anything, will the girl be able to help him? Julia gives a positive answer. Then the young man says that he studies at the academy, so he can sometimes be busy with his studies. The girl replies that it's okay. She also got her primary education there, and then started working in this store. She also asks Rei not to be offended by his grandmother. She started behaving like this after the death of Julia's father. Rei asks what happened to the girl's father. She says that her dad went away on business but never came back. Everyone says that monsters killed him. Rei apologizes for bringing it up. The girl says it's okay, and since he works here, he should know about it. Rei then asked Julia what her grandmother's name was. The girl replied that the woman's name was Ginevra. Rei realizes that Ginevra's son did not return and that she took over the store to cover the hole left by the loss of her son. He wonders whose shop this was originally. It was definitely not Ginevra who set these prices. Maybe her husband did, or they were taken over after Julia's father died, or maybe it was his shop originally. Judging by the prices, he didn't really need this store. Then he notices Julia's eyes on him. The girl asks where the boy learned to value. Rei replies that he learned it at home. Every aristocrat needs to know this. Every aristocrat must understand how much anything in front of him is worth. Julia said she learned it by watching her parents. Dad served customers and did most of the sales. She tried to learn it too, but she didn't understand much of it. She wrote all the current prices. However, apparently, they were all wrong. Rei asked if she wanted to learn it. The girl asked if she really could. She thanked the boy. Rei said that although he still doesn't understand much, he can teach the basics. Rei is good at judging quality. By comparing it to the things that were in the palace, he can easily understand what a good quality thing looks like. He is a prince, so he has only seen the best. The problem is that he hasn't quite figured out the local pricing yet, i.e., what is the minimum price and what is the maximum price. In addition, he still needs to study supply and demand. He can find out the price of magic stones or magic tools from Oliver. He can try to set the price of jewelry himself. If he can't decide, he will simply try to get help from Julia. About accessories that provide buffs. If you don't understand something, it's always better to turn to the experts. Rei thinks it would be good if he had friends in the trade. Suddenly, Julia distracts him and says that this accessory, she thought that in their time you can't sell something like that, after all, it's a very expensive thing. Ray says the design is old-fashioned, but the gem is definitely real. If the design is redesigned to fit a modern style, it will definitely sell for a good price. The Uzan around it is also oxidized. It must be silver. Ray thought that maybe someone from the technical department could change the design. After some time, he finishes the work and says that they worked until sunset. Suddenly, Ray notices that Julia is watching him. The girl started laughing, and Ray said that if she was going to laugh, she should at least laugh out loud. The girl asks for forgiveness.